Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smashbox TV Podcast 522. Post Labor Day. I put on different sandals because, you know, the change of the seasons and all.
Well, of course.
No more white sandals.
The seasons didn't change yet.
Well,
they changed.
So, I don't want to say preschool. Prior to going to school, post going to school, prior and post Labor Day. That's like a seasonal change.
It does feel like a seasonal change.
It's a fashion season.
It is. You're right, and
that's what I'm concerned with.
I saw on the news last night whether people asking if you're going to wear white because traditionally you don't wear white after Labor Day.
Exactly.
And only 20% of the people said they cared.
Yeah,
80% of the people don't anymore.
All those trends are dying.
It's an old thing.
I know. All those trends are dying, which good riddance to a few of them. Well, what's not dying is our old and decrepit podcast here. That's five.
We keep limping around. We keep limping along.
We keep it going. It's 522 episodes in. Tonight, I think we have a first ever in terms of who our guest is going to be, which is kind of crazy, and it feels about 500 episodes overdue.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, we're going to talk about what happened on the Disc Golf Pro Tour scene. We'll get to that a little later. We've got a recap. I went to Mexico. That could be a few hours of podcasting in itself. I'll spare you a few of the pictures. But before we get to any of that, we're going to welcome world-class, arguably the best course designer in the world. We're going to put him to the test. And, of course, I'm talking about John Houck. Welcome in, John. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see both of you guys. Terry, I guess it's been since the Pro Tour conference last year, and Johnny, been a while, but great to see you both, and glad to be here. And 522, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of wild to think that it's been that long, but there has been. Well, first of all, before we get into any nuts and bolts by any means. We've known you for a few decades. We don't have to all completely date ourselves, but we've known you for more than 25 years.
You said you weren't going to go into that.
I'm just saying more than 25 years. I'm not putting any ages on this. We've known you, of course. However, some of the world may not be fully up to speed and up to date with contributions, backstory, things of that nature. So let's start with a few of the basics, which just is introduce yourself and how do you describe you and what you do within disc golf right now?
Okay, I'll take a crack at that. That's normally somebody else's job, but she's not with us tonight, but hi, Dee. I'll start with a little bit of revealing trivia. In 1994, I was commissioner of the Professional Disc Golf Association, TD of the World Championships, and course designer for the World Championships. A feat that was replicated on a much bigger scale here 30 years later in 2024. So I actually 40 years this year since I designed my very first course. I've been an avid player since 1978. I played my first tournament. Disc Golf Hall of Fame, PDJ commissioner. I've solo designed, give or take, 135 courses by now. I still love it. I'm very excited about it. We get to do new things all the time. Still have the same passion, and some of those passions have been stirred up a little bit recently, and so I think it's time to have a good discussion about some of these things.
I feel like we get into this discussion with or without you once a year. It just feels like there's always something. There's always a new course showing up, or the first time the pros play a course, whether it's a new hole or just a change that gets the community a little bit more active, we'll say, in the discussions about course design.
Yeah, and with that, I guess what I want to piggyback on that immediately and say, obviously you know a thing or two about disc golf. You've been around. You've also done some commentary on Worlds videos. You have other world titles. You've produced some of the first ever disc golf media on video in terms of instructional videos. So you span all of these different things. I mean, quite frankly, we don't have all night to give you all of the time you deserve But
Let's get to the
so
good stuff.
you've been around and doing all these amazing things. And when people reference disc golf course design, clearly you're one of the very first people, if not the first person, that comes with a standard name recognition. And just maybe for everyone else, tell them what course design means to you and how it's become this thing you're so synonymous with.
Well, as a player, back when I was playing tournaments, one of the things that was challenging for me as a player was that every time I played a hole, I knew before I got out of the shower that morning what shot I was going to throw. I knew what disc, what angle, what speed, and it was going to work or it wasn't going to work. And I have somewhat of a golf background. My dad started taking me out to the course when I was probably about 5 years old, before I was old enough to realize that the lowest score wins. And I will never forget the day that he broke that to me. I probably should have given. I thought I was the man, and I was beating him and all his buddies. So I have somewhat of a golf background, and when I really started to get into course design, and I wanted some kind of education. Obviously, going around the country and seeing a lot of courses and playing courses is great. But I started reading, books on golf course design. Obviously, there are a lot of important differences between what we do and what they do, but they have a 400-year head start on us, and they do a lot of things right. They've made a lot of mistakes that they've learned from. So if we can learn from them, we certainly should do that. So, I continue to learn on every project. I continue to try to innovate and push myself. And, the bottom line is it needs to be an enjoyable experience for the players. And if it's a tournament situation, it needs to be fair and challenging. And these days, spectator friendly too and camera friendly. But the bottom line is about the playing experience. And that's what I'm really passionate about.
I'll jump right into such a distinct sentence you just said, talking about the worrying about basically media and the players. This has changed so drastically from some of your first courses in the 90s to where we are now, and the concern for cameras, media, in terms of those actual personnel, and then spectators. All of which are just a completely different world from where you started back then, or maybe you were concerned, but they actually weren't there, and so it was a moot point. But I'm just trying to think of what exactly are you concerned about? How much emphasis do you put on those other things, those media? Whether it's be the cameras and or the spectators, we'll just call that all the spectator
Sure.
Media experience.
Well, it depends on the
there?
course, right? It depends on the course and what the client's goals are. And, certainly we have clients now who want their courses someday to be on the Pro Tour. And so that means designing for spectators from the get-go. Where do they park? Where do they watch from? How do we get them around? How do they enjoy the experience without interfering with the players? Those are things, honestly, we never thought about those things. But now it's a huge part of the experience for everybody on certain venues, right? Other courses, it's not as big a deal. Although I think we've probably learned our lesson. I was working on a course a couple of years ago and said, well, this probably won't host anything bigger than an A tier. There won't be spectators at an A tier. And then I thought, man, let's be smart. A lot of things happen that we weren't expecting. So let's keep that flexibility so that we can grow into that. So, planning how to take care of them and how to take care of the players at the same time. It's a very different challenge, but I love a good challenge. And, it all has to work together. And I think there are two big myths that we need to get rid of. One is that you can't film disc golf in the woods very well. I think even on a course like W.R. Jackson or some of the other ones that are out there, I think we've disproven that. And we did that without having cameras as part of the plan in the beginning. So now that we can put cameras in the plan from even before we start, I think we've got a really bright future on that. The other thing is that you can have spectators on a wooded course, and that's also not true. I mean, if you can clear a fairway, you can clear a little extra if you need to put spectators in there. And by the way, this time of year, they're going to be in the shade, and I think they're going to appreciate that. So we've got several projects that we're working on now where spectators will be part of the plan, and they're hoping for big results and big tournaments, and it's actually very exciting to be designing that way.
Yeah, I think that because I attack almost everything lately from the media side. It's just what I've unfortunately, I don't know, come to look at. And what do you think needs to happen to courses to make them camera friendly, so to speak? Because from our perspective right now, we have usually a camera or two behind the players, a camera or two up the fairway or behind the basket, however depending on what the par is. How do you make a course camera friendly, in your opinion? Because I have ideas, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I think you have to make sure that they're going to have clean lines, right? That the spectators are not going to be in the way of those lines. I think in a lot of cases, you want to give them the opportunity to be elevated. Just a little pet peeve of mine, when you're watching the drive and the player steps in front of the camera, can't we get the cameraman up 2 feet so that the player walks under the camera? And then, on a par 4 or par 5, where we're going to have well-defined landing areas and good shots are going to land in there, put the cameras in a position where they get the follow and make sure we have positioning for them that they can show where that disc has landed relative to the basket, right? Because we know how confusing it is when the camera's on the disc and then it pans to the basket, and it's hard to keep that kind of perspective. So if we find lines for the camera that make sense and put them in the plan, and you can sure test them before you go live, but make sure that those lines will be unobstructed and that they're going to work for the players and the spectators and obviously for the whole media crew.
That's funny. Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of the area behind the tee as elevating. We do see our cameramen when there's a bench or something, sometimes they'll stand on that if possible. And I came at it in my head from a course-wide perspective, thinking about the logistics of the equipment and having sometimes to move cameramen from hole to hole. There are times we will hear, in our ear, hey, I need a camera to go from hole 4 to hole 12. And whether or not we need to make, we think about a course almost as a linear thing. You go from 1 to 18, but when it comes to cameras, that's not the case because we can't have cameras everywhere. So we're always looking at the course as a whole. How do I get a guy from one side to the other as quickly as possible, whether that's via cart or whether there's shortcuts through paths? It's a totally different perspective when you have to think of it as an entire entity versus a hole by hole perspective.
No, that's a great point. And we do need to be ready for that kind of situation.
Let's back up just one more step, which is name some of the courses that have your name on them that the world would know about, that we've seen on the large stage or larger stage, because you celebrated your 100th course, which I was actually present for. I don't know how many years ago was that. Now I feel like
2017 maybe.
Okay, so about 16. About 7 years ago. That was your 100th course design and installation. So name some of the courses though that either you've had a direct hand in or a large part of or exclusively done that the world would definitely know about or recognize in some capacity, probably due to media.
Sure. Let's go with W.R. Jackson, Harmony Benz, Hillcrest Farm, which has had the Canadian Nationals 3 times, Sela Lakeside and Sela Creekside. All of those have had majors and or national world championships. And all have been very highly ranked on one or both of the ranking platforms. So those are probably the ones that people know best.
Nantucket, which I know hasn't had as much media exposure these last couple of years, but I've covered Nantucket, and that's where I had seen you, and you were the primary course designer of the Nantucket course as well. A lot of people have seen that.
Yes, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, Nantucket, Hobbs Farm, Parc des Familles in New Orleans, which, quick side note, the third annual 3 disc golf Safer, Smarter, and More Sustainable Conference, which Dee started primarily for course designers, but expanding for everybody. This will be the 3rd year. Last year was Maple Hill. This year will be in New Orleans in November. So anybody who has a real interest in course design, we're very passionate about education and discussion and making the industry better for designers. Come join us in New Orleans.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get all the details on that a little later. But one of the other things along those lines is you have constantly and regularly been a writer or someone that has what's the word I'm looking, contributor to our disc golf publications as well. I mean, is that literally every single magazine has it been, or I mean, I'm not sure if you're contracted or if those are things, how that works.
No, it was pretty much every single issue back in the day. And then I'll never forget one day Rick Rothstein, who was the editor at the time, said to me, he said, "I've seen a lot of new courses and I don't think they're reading your articles."
Yeah. Okay.
But then when Randy Signer became the editor, give or take 5 years ago, of Disc Golfer, we brought it back and had a good run there. And I'm always very gratified to hear that people thought that those articles were helpful to them. And most of them are still out on the internet, so anybody who's interested should be able to track them down without too much trouble.
Quick side note, have you ever looked or reread an article that you wrote from 15, 20 years ago and maybe your mind has been changed or your perspective or your angle or anything like that? Have you ever thought, man, if I could revise this today, I would give this a real edit, or no?
I don't know about a big edit, but I will say that it's important to me to always be learning and always trying to get better. And we're so blessed. Almost every job gives us opportunities to do things new. So, look at how we look at safety has changed so much over 40 years. So many things are different now, not just the spectators and media, but safety considerations have changed so much. I have some different thoughts, I guess, to some extent on Mandos. Not a fan, pretty much ever, except in very rare cases. And just how you construct a hole and what the priorities are and what the approach is, that's actually changed a lot over the years. So, I feel like I'm a better designer than I was 5 years ago. And, better than I was 10 and 20 and on and on. So, the basics are the same, but the techniques, and of course the opportunities have changed so much. I mean, we're doing things now because we have the budget or the equipment or the client's buy-in. I mean, there are things that I had drawn up at Circle R in Wimberley in 1995 that I finally got to do at Harmony Benz in 2015. So a lot of things are changing, and we're doing things now just in the past year that we haven't done before, and it's a great time to be involved in disc golf. Obviously in many areas, but certainly in design.
Okay, with that being said, let's let's get to the nuts and bolts of the conversation regarding, we'll just say, the World Championship. And obviously course design, as Johnny said earlier, I feel like it's talked about just about every single weekend, whether it's the hills and how they'll play the toboggan, and some people like myself and Johnny played the toboggan in the year 2000 for the Worlds, and how different it looks even compared to then. So course design is discussed, and a hole is usually it's one or two holes ultimately get discussed just about every single week. Worlds had kind of a special flavoring, because you had one course that was highly regarded, but by seemingly everyone, and that there might be a few dissenters out there, but seemingly everyone enjoyed the Lynchburg course and liked that course and that property. And then there's the chaos of it potentially losing the 7 holes. And then we had an entirely different beast over at Ivy Hill. Completely different style, shape of the land. Like, it couldn't be more, contrast it more. It was very different. So I guess let's start with Lynchburg. Paul Macbeth leading that charge. And I don't know if you're looking to critique, or if you just want to throw out thoughts as to what you do or don't like, or what you were seeing or experiencing, maybe as a fan, or as a spectator, or as a fellow designer.
Sure. Well, I'll make a couple general comments. I'm not looking to critique anybody.
Sure.
And not looking to make the conversation about specific courses and specific events. I really, what I've been doing since, a lot of the discussion heated up in the last few weeks, is I'm trying to look at the big picture. Where do we want to be as a sport? Where do we want our courses to be? How do we want course design to go? So Lynchburg, as you said, I heard a lot of great things from a lot of people, and it looked like Paul did a nice job. A lot of it was very tight, which was appropriate for the pros, and they seemed to appreciate that. I think the only thing that I think is probably worth a discussion is if you look at a place like W.R. Jackson, where I worked really hard to give players options on a lot of tee shots and on a lot of approach shots. There didn't seem to be a lot there, but maybe it doesn't always have to be that way. I think a lot of people appreciated the fact that there was a more wooded course and a more open course. Mm-hmm. And I think in this situation, that's really what you had to work with, and so you do the best with what you can. To me, the ideal is probably a mixture of both, right? If you can have some open and some wooded, or things in the woods that are wider sometimes, that's where I try to get to as the ideal. So it's not one or the other. And sometimes I look at these, so many of the Pro Tour courses are on ball golf courses, and then there are notable examples that are in the woods, and people, tend to look at them as two different things. And I don't think we want to be like tennis, where, your majors are one on grass, one on clay, one on hard surface. So I think if we want to get to a place where our best courses are a little mixture of everything.
Yeah, and I guess as almost a tangent right away is, when you see golf courses, ball golf courses, and I know another fellow designer, Leonard Muse, very active and had put together everything that we see out in Stockton, for instance, out at the OTB event. Just generally speaking, when you see an event or a production is going to go on at a golf course, do you immediately sigh or cringe or shy away, or not necessarily? Like, how do you feel about golf courses?
Always got to give it a chance. And just as an example, we are currently working on 2 projects that are on former golf courses. Right? And I want to acknowledge that setting something up on a temporary basis is not the same as doing something on a permanent basis. I mean, we're on these courses. I have the opportunity to plant trees. I have the opportunity to make mounds, maybe to put in ponds. Those are things you can't do on a temporary course. But I don't think temporary and permanent need to be as different as people are saying. Just because you're on a ball golf course doesn't mean everything has to be open and 600 feet. And it certainly doesn't mean that everything has to have OB everywhere. And so we're working on a property in Memphis, former golf course, great topography, features that were built for the golf course, like old tees and greens that are already elevated and flat that we'll be able to incorporate in the design, and a lot of woods between the fairways, which have even more topography than the golf course does. So this is, to me, maybe the best property that we've worked on. And so we're able to do all of that. We're going to be able to do some good things with the construction. So again, the ideal is the best of woods disc golf, the best of semi-open disc golf, and finding the spaces for the spectators. It's all in there. So we're very excited about that project. But I think it's important, and Portland's probably a good example, right? A lot of trees in play in Portland. So that's on a golf course, but it still has a lot of holes that have that disc golf feel. So that's a good place for us to be. And just because you're on a ball golf course doesn't mean you're going to have shots with trees. And if I can quickly hit another thing that's been bothering me, I noticed so many shots that the pro players throw where there's not a single tree between where they are and where they're going to that they really have to deal with. And I actually, at the conference last year, introduced a metric for that sounds like it's starting to catch on. It's OPT, obstacles per throw. And there are, seems like a growing number of shots that have an OPT score of close to 0. Right? They're just, wide open from tee to landing area, from landing area to green. And if you're going to have a shot where all that matters is where you wind up, where your disc comes to rest, that's what ball golf is, right? That's their game. You want it to come to rest in a particular place. We do that too, obviously, but how do we get there, right? We can do all kinds of things with the disc that they can't do with a ball, and decision making for us can be about, do I hit this gap or this gap or this gap, or do I try to go wide of everything, but it's a little more dangerous? Those are the things that when you don't incorporate trees, you don't get to see the player's thinking process. You're not forcing them to think. And I think we lose a very important part of the game when we do that. So I would love to see us in the future focusing more about whatever the venue is, make sure that we're, having players throw disc golf shots and not golf shots.
And I've always been on the show and I've always talked how I love different courses on the tour because of the variety. Do you see that there is a use for a hole with, we'll say, a 0 OPT just to flex distance, just to show a skill like Anthony Barella, who can just mash on a disc 580 feet? That I think some people really enjoy watching just a big wide open bomb without having to worry.
Well, you can throw a 580-foot shot and still have to navigate something a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be a 5-foot gap or a 10-foot gap or maybe even a 20-foot gap, but those guys should have that opportunity to do that, and we do try to put that into our courses, right? I think everybody agrees that you don't want that hole after hole after hole, but every once in a while to be able to do that. And, I'm thinking now, do I put a house on a hill in the fairway? so that Anthony can show his ability to throw
Just to launch over
houses.
one.
Just for fun, you never know.
Yeah, that was a shocker. So you're right. If I can we go to OB? Is this a good time?
No,
to
go for
Sure.
it.
segue
Yeah.
into that? Okay, because the point is, we want to give our best players the opportunity to do what they do best, right? And throwing big long shots is one of those things. But they can also be very creative. They can also, do different angles and speeds to get themselves out of trouble. And a quick example, I think it was first round. Kristen got off the fairway on a hole early on, and Nate Perkins was actually doing the call at that time. And by the way, Nate said a lot of things during Worlds that I really appreciated. And so she was in the woods. She had to step out. She was looking at a sidearm, and Nate had a perspective where he said she's got to hit this first gap, but then she's got another gap to hit, and it's going to be almost impossible for her to park it. And she hit the right angle, the right speed, the right disc. She hit the first gap. She hit the second gap. It flexed out, and she was parked. It was an amazing shot. And if you put rope on the edge of the fairway, she never has that lie. She never has that opportunity to save a stroke, and she never has the opportunity to show us what she can do. I mean, as a spectator, those are the amazing shots that we don't want to get away from. And when you put rope everywhere, or cart paths, or sand traps, or whatever it's going to be, and players take a stroke and don't have the opportunity to recover and make those amazing shots, you're depriving them and you're depriving us. And, in the big picture, what kind of sport do we want to be? I really think we want to be a sport where we encourage scrambling. So design the courses so that is going to be part of the game. And I'm spending a lot of time on these courses now in the woods, making sure that they're going to have those opportunities if they make a little mistake, and that those opportunities aren't going to be too easy. That, to me, should be a real important part of the playing experience. I mean, these players work hard to develop all those skills. Let's give them the opportunity to use them.
Well, that very much echoes, and more than one person can have this original thought. That very much echoes a conversation I had with Sean Sinclair many years ago with regard to the USDGC. And that's so relevant because the USDGC, for those that don't know, are the ones that really cemented the idea of using rope and using artificial OB in such a high-profile event. Having thousands of feet of rope out there was a staple of the USDGC, and that's even gone through different iterations of how it was hung, where it is. There's an upper and a lower one now, all that. I mean, that's, again, a whole nother subset. But that was exactly what I remember him telling me many years ago, is like, you go out of bounds, you get your penalty stroke, and there's just no chance. We're not, just as you said, we're not showing off a scramble. They're not given the opportunity because they're just penalized, and they're probably throwing from a relatively open spot because there's already not a lot of trees to deal with in a lot of that course. So I very much can appreciate that. Do you, with that OB though, and we'll use a course like USDGC, you could insert a number of them on the tour as well, but like a USDGC, is it possible to have a challenging course out there without that amount of rope, that amount of artificial OB?
Thank you for the hanging curveball. Look, the list that I gave you: W.R. Jackson, Harmony Bends, Hillcrest Farms, Sela Lakeside, Sela Creekside, and you could throw in Parc de Famille and several others, combined have zero rope. Zero artificial OB, whatever you want to call them. So can we do it without it? Absolutely.
Are those properties just better though? Like, I'll sorry to interrupt, but are those
Well,
is the what you had to work with was the canvas of those pieces of property, and then therefore those courses, was the canvas just already better than, say, a Winthrop?
well, okay. Let me. I'm going to say one thing about USDGC, and I've said it a lot of times, but it does bear repeating. I understand what Dave and Harold were trying to do there initially, which was to create a disc golf version of the U.S. Open in golf. And I have always defended what they've done because it was supposed to be a one-off, right?
Mm.
That was the only course that was going to be like that. And what's happened is so many courses decided to try to emulate that, and that's where we got in trouble. I mean, if we had left that one as the one, then that was fine, but that's not where we are today. So, look, those were great properties. There are a lot of open areas that I had to avoid, and sometimes it takes a long time to figure out, how do I keep this hole from getting people into an area that's too open? And maybe to do it, I have to shift, several other holes to do it. But there's almost always an answer. And so even when you're on a ball golf venue, find the trees, find ways to use them, shift things around if you need to. So I will only say for myself, I've designed several times on ball golf courses, and I have not yet found a situation where I said, I got to put down some rope. That's the only way to make it work. So, use the trees, use the water if it's there, use the elevation if it's there. And, again, I don't want to get into any other specific examples because, it's easy to look at these courses that are out there and say they coulda, woulda, shoulda, but we don't know what kind of limitations they had. We don't know, what the property owner said they couldn't do. So we don't need to go there. I'm just trying to talk about what we think the ideal should be.
Yeah, me too. Even when you reached out this morning, I was thinking, well, I'm not trying to get into a tit for tat or necessarily a this is good and this is bad of these specifics, because as you just said, I think a lot of people underplay, because I've done about 30 courses myself, obviously not to the scale of which you have, but you see the reviews and you see when people post things and you're like, they didn't get it. We couldn't go to that section of the woods, or this is 9 holes on a middle school property. It's not meant to challenge a 1,000 rated player. Like, some people don't understand parameters or never even think about them. And therefore they can't comprehend that, well, this isn't their favorite course and they have no idea why. Well, it wasn't meant to be, you idiot. That's how I feel about it.
Let's just, everybody needs love, Terry. Sometimes they're having a bad day.
Even idiots, yes, they need love too.
But I certainly understand the frustration. So what I'm trying to impress upon people now, here's the idea. There are good shots and better shots and best shots, and those should get good rewards and better rewards and best rewards. There are bad shots and worse shots and worse and worst, and those should have the same range of punishment. And phrase I'm using a lot lately is the punishment should fit the crime. So if you're dealing with a lot of rope, the person who misses by a foot gets the same punishment as the person who misses by 50 feet, and that's not right. Okay, so that's something that we really need to look at. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it, but I noticed that there were areas at New London Tech where they had very deliberately and very well gone in and cleared out all the brush on the edge of the fairway, and in some cases got rid of the rope, so that somebody who's off the fairway by a foot can recover, but it's challenging, and somebody who misses by 10 feet and somebody who misses by 30 feet still have an opportunity, but the bigger your mistake, the harder it's going to be to get back in business, and that's where I think we really want to be. And it's not easy. It takes a lot of time in the design, and it takes a lot of extra work in the build and the maintenance. But what you get for making that effort is a much richer and much more enjoyable game for the players and the spectators.
Well, and what I'll add on to that, I think an interesting example that we've seen in the last couple of years is Champions Cup this year, held at the Northwood Black Horse over at Northwood. And one thing that just stuck out in my mind more than anything was Kelvin Heimberg at the press conference, whether it was last year's Ledgestone or this year's event, was talking about how he feels as they cleared almost too much out of the rough. I mean, it's a very brutal course that really punishes players. And he almost had an interesting criticism of saying, now it's too easy to scramble back out of stuff. He loved that it was so punishing. And so it's such a fine line, I feel like, of making it so punishing where people just hate the course or hate even being there, and then still giving them an opportunity to scramble and finding that clearing, so to speak, at different levels. Does that make sense?
You're absolutely right. And it very much depends on the property. We don't want the brush to be so thick that it's essentially an OB stroke. But if you're going to clear it out and somebody misses the fairway by 2-3 feet, you want them to be looking at something, that's maybe a 4 or 5 foot gap, or maybe it's further down the fairway and it's a 5-6 foot gap, but something where if they can make that shot with the right speed and the right disc and the right angle, they can recover. If you clear everything out and somebody misses that shot and now they have a straight look at the basket or they have an easy approach, then you're not in a situation where the punishment and the crime are in sync there. So yes, it's not as simple as just clear out all the brush and move on, because you don't want that situation where somebody makes a mistake and they're like, oh, that's the greatest mistake I ever made. I'm happy here. That's not what you want. And when you're building a permanent course, and even sometimes a temporary course, if you're in the woods, you can plant a tree there so that this person who made the mistake now has something to contend with. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And like I said, it takes a lot of extra work, but it's worth it to create the right experience.
When it comes to a major development that we have seen just as a sport in general is correctly designing for MPO versus FPO. And we could say AMs and pros, we could say all the different skill levels, blue, red, whatever. You can use all the different distinctions, but when I'm thinking Pro Tour and our top players, we'll say MPO and FPO because they're the ones on the Pro Tour. Someone very vocal for probably a good part of the last decade has been Sarah Houck in advocating for correct tees, correct placements and shots and playing golf, so to speak. But yet over in Europe, I feel like that's almost met with the opposite. It's almost met with resistance to some degree of we just play the same, the men and the women just play the same tees, and that's just the way it is. Have you had any conversations? I'm kind of in like 3 different areas here, but have you had any conversations or thoughts about how we're seeing namely the tees and some pins being designed accordingly?
Yeah, no, a very, very important topic. And first of all, props to Sarah. She spoke at the Pro Tour convention last year. She spoke at Dee's conference in Maple Hill last year, which was great. She's going to be speaking again this year in New Orleans. I don't know if she's there in person or if she's there virtually, but her voice deserves to be heard, and we're going to make sure we do what we can to get that out there. It's a very important topic, and when I ran the World Championships in 1994 in Port Arthur, and At that time, I decided to have a meeting with all the women before the tournament to talk about tees. And at that time, a lot of them were coming from the place of, we want equal treatment. We want to be treated the same as the men. Give us the same tees. Off we go. But thankfully, that's changed, right? As we have learned better to match the tees and the pin positions and the widths and everything else to the skill level. And it's not about gender, right? It's about skill level. So if all of a sudden all the top women were as good as Calvin and Isaac and Ricky, then let's play the same tees. But that's not where we are right now. So every division, male, female, mixed, um, uh, we need to take care of all of them and make sure that the holes play fairly and appropriately for all of them. And while we have made a lot of progress, it's really disheartening to see that, there are still a bunch of holes out there on the Pro Tour where the women are not being treated, the way that they should, because the holes don't fit their skill set properly. So it's been a big thing for me to make sure that I'm accommodating them, the way I can. And a lot of times, it's goes according to rating. So the top women are 950 to 1,000 generally, which is where blue level is for everybody. And so almost all the courses I make, have a blue set of tees that works out great for the women. And a real quick anecdote, because you mentioned Nantucket. I was there one year. There was a backup on hole 16. Paul and Simon were in that group. And, a lot of those Nantucket holes, the par fours are 600 feet. They're really tweeners for these guys. Mm-hmm. And I said, guys, I'm sorry. I feel terrible. It's so hard for me to watch you guys play these holes. And Paul said, you know what? I think this course is perfect for the women. Mm-hmm. And Simon looked up over the top of some of those pine trees. He said, I don't know. I kind of like it. But that's who Simon was back in those days. But yes, regardless of gender, the tees and the pins and the landing areas and the widths and the lengths and everything else need to make sense for that group who's going to be playing that course.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that again, Sarah, along with the tournament directors, along with Jeff Spring, who's active, and Phil, and all of those guys on the Pro Tour, I feel like every single iteration of every tournament continues to get closer and closer to hitting it right on the mark, and some certainly even have already.
Yes,
in my opinion, they go out and play appropriate courses and/or appropriate layouts on the same course. So it's maybe been, for some, maybe it feels like it's been slow, but it has been, I feel like, steadily improving. And that is thanks, like you said. And Sarah's not the only advocate. There's obviously others as well. No. I mean, and we even just heard Owen, expressing some frustration at Worlds about a particular shot on a particular hole, and some conversation, and then a slight adjustment was actually made per that. So it seems like it's things are trending in that right direction. Fair to say, Absolutely. Though, I guess with all of that being said, it could be there's no set number. There could be anywhere from 1 to 9 holes that could be either the same or different from MPO and FPO, depending on the individual course, right? Like on the individual hole.
Yeah, it could be. Generally, almost exclusively, those are going to be par 3 holes. Mm-hmm. And just real quickly, for what it's worth, my thinking on par 3s is the same as what goes on in the golf world. I think this is one of the things that they got right. And par 3s are reachable off the tee for everybody in that skill set, right? There's no, guy can only throw 350 and the hole's at 400 and he doesn't have a chance to birdie it. if 350 is a reasonable distance for that division. So, and Terry, I've always had a really strong favoritism for shorter, tricky holes, and sometimes the best play is a putter on par threes to make sure that players can show us that they can make that shot. Casey White is somebody who talks about this a lot, and I agree with him. I never have to throw a 250-foot approach shot if I'm playing well, because I'm throwing a big drive off the tee, and then maybe I'm throwing a big shot to get to the basket, and it's hard, given the range of distances that people throw, to say that I'm going to put everybody in this position where they have to throw a tricky 250-foot shot or 280-foot shot, whatever it is. But you can do that with a par three. It's hard to make a great par three that's sub 300 feet and still has a trickiness and potential penalties. But I love those kind of holes. And those are the kind of holes that potentially could work, same tee and basket, for MPO and FPO.
So when you're designing, whether it be for FPO specifically or MPO now, we've seen in the last 15 years, the skills are different. I mean, when we played Worlds 20 years ago, like a 400-foot hole was a long hole. Like, okay, wow, that's, whew. And then you'd see 500-foot holes, then 600-foot holes, and we would just, I mean, rarely did we play these 600-foot holes. Now these 600-foot holes are like, they're tweener holes. How do you accommodate the changes in skill level that maybe are coming for, specifically, I think, for the FPO, because I'm going to kick myself in 10 years, but I feel like the top level of the MPO is starting to kind of hit the peak of what we can do with discs that we have now. Are you looking at that in the future? Do you go to a course and be like, all right, this is a good course now, but in 15 years it might not be? Or do you care about that, so to speak?
Absolutely. And I said something similar not long after the Stingray came out, right? We've gone probably about as far as we can go. So it's really a matter of building flexibility into the design, right? Nantucket, just to go back to that, because it's one that people, especially Terry, know well. There's just no room, right? There's no room to move the tees back. There's no room to move the pins back. You're pretty much stuck there. But now that we're doing these bigger properties, right, we never had to worry about spectators. Now we're doing multiple courses where we have spectator considerations in there. So it's, we have to be smart and make sure that we leave room in the future if we need to move the tees back, move the pins back, be able to accommodate more spectators. You have to learn from the past and know that things may be coming that we didn't anticipate, and be ready for them, and leave yourself that flexibility to do that. Probably have to add more vending areas on more holes in the future as spectators increase, and they need infrastructure and they have their own concerns, and that'll be a bigger part of the experience for spectators. So it's all part of it. And somebody said to me the other day, I mean, what do we even do 5 years from now if some kid is making Gannon Burr's skill set look outdated? I don't know, but that's what's happened the last 10 years, and I'm with you, right? It's hard to imagine that we're going to stay on that same path, especially in MPO, but you never know. You just got to be ready.
Yeah, I feel like the players, like the next level up, so to speak, is on the putting green, where they're going to be better C2 putters. We're going to have to find ways to challenge them more on the green, because I used to have a thought like, well, there should be nothing within 30 feet of the basket. You should have your green, and that was me 25 years ago. And my thought now has completely changed as far as how you want to challenge greens and make them accessible from only specific sides and things like that, which kind of brings me to maybe the next big question that we saw at Ivy Hill was the sloped green. And I mean, because that's really one of the things that really blew up this conversation. And I know you're not here to critique specific holes, but just as a concept, we now have these elevated baskets and sloped greens that are really trying to challenge players to make a decision, whether it's to lay up. As I said last week on that hole, I said every player had an opportunity to lay up from 30 feet if they wanted to, and it probably wasn't going to roll. But our players are too good to do that these days because they all want to hit that putt. What's your take on that? How do you challenge them on the green?
Well, two things. So real quick on C2, and then let's talk about slopes. We seem like we're pretty much past the era where we had this huge debate. C1 putting is too easy. It's boring. The pros never miss. Nobody wants to watch them. So we need smaller baskets, right? We don't hear much of that anymore. My answer to that was always, let's design courses so that C2 is a good shot, and an amazing shot gets to C1. And it's hard to do because these players are so good, but you can make holes where they're going to be happy if they're in C2. And now they're engaging in something that's challenging for them, and we're watching something that we don't already know the outcome to, right? I mean, they're in C1, time to hit the fridge and come back and listen to Terry on the next hole. And by the way, completely unsolicited, I think you're doing a great job. I just think you're getting better every year, Terry, and I really enjoyed having you in the booth for that. So the next thing, because this has been in my head a lot the last week, C2 is a good place for people to be because the outcome is unknown and it's going to be a lot more interesting to watch. So what happens when you put the OB line, basically on the edge of the circle, right? People who a lot of times they're in circle 2 and they're OB and they're taking a stroke. So they don't get the opportunity to make that shot and show how good a putter they are, and we don't have the opportunity to watch them. So I think that's something we really should pay more attention to. And D is actually come up with some great innovations on how we present the circle on our courses coming up. She actually has some great innovations on the tee areas. So those are some of the things that you'll be seeing on our courses in the future. Now, slopes. I think people get in trouble a lot when we're talking about slopes because there's two different aspects to it, and people tend to merge them together. So we need to break them out. Number one is what you just said, Johnny. If it's a slope where the angle and the ground cover put us in a position where good shots should stick, and it's a matter of skill. You have to use the right disc, and you have to use the right angle, and you have to use the right speed. And if you do all that, you should feel comfortable that it's going to stick. That's where we want to be, because that is the player being able to show a skill. If a player uses a wrong disc, and I'm just shocked by the number of people who throw sub 200-foot shots, and I'm talking about pros, with a fast disc, and it hits on a moderate slope and rolls away. That's on you. You made a bad choice. You didn't execute. When you're on a slope where I'm going to throw what I think is a perfect shot, and I don't know what's going to happen, I'm just praying that it sticks. Now it's you're bringing luck into the situation, and that's not what we want to do, right? One of the biggest goals of any course that's going to be used for a tournament should be to tell us who's playing the best disc golf that day. And we want the winners to be the one who executed the best, not the ones who got the luckiest. So were there some slopes out there, and are there some slopes on other courses where people are getting rollaways when they shouldn't? Yes. So we need to keep an eye on that. And by the way, since you mentioned it, hate to see pros put in a situation where they're 50, 60 feet and the smart shot is to lay up, right? We don't want to do that to them. We might want to put it, to where there's some risk involved and they have to think about it. But if they look at it and go, no, I'm just laying up, that's not good for anybody. Now, the second part of the real quick. Nope. The second part of the whole situation is if somebody gets a spit or they hit off the rim, they hit off the top or whatever, and now they're going to roll away because something happened that was beyond their control. It wasn't really their fault. Sometimes, you didn't make the putt right. Oh my God, James Proctor was the one that God knows why that came out, but it happens sometimes. He didn't do anything wrong, and the punishment did not fit the crime, right? He got a huge punishment, and he really didn't do anything wrong. And by the way, now we're in this Twilight Zone episode where we're hoping it's going to roll OB, so that he can putt from the same lie. How crazy is that? But if you hit the chains, it looks like a good putt, or maybe a little bit of mistake, and you deserve to not make the putt, and you drop by the basket, that's fine. But you don't deserve to roll away 100 feet for a tiny little mistake like that. And some putts look great. I mean, we don't know why they didn't stick. They don't deserve that kind of thing. So there are things that we can do. I'm not saying by any means don't put baskets on slopes. Don't use slopes in the courses. I love slopes. If we use them right, they can be a huge plus for courses and for players and for spectators. But we have to use them right. And I started, I think, probably at Harmony Bends. 2017 was the first time we put a log down below a pin, so that if somebody did start to roll away, they got caught and they didn't have to scramble 2 strokes just to get back up to the pin.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because 14, so much conversation about it, and had that situation with James happened on any other hole, because what's so wild about that is, as we all agree, the putt looked perfect. We have no idea how or why it came out, and it was magnified by a million because it was already on that particular green. That happens anywhere else, a good point. Right? That happens anywhere else. I know there's another slope on 10 and a few of the other really sloped greens, but that happens on so many of the other holes, and we're back to having a big argument about baskets not working or whatever. We're back to that argument. But it was just magnified or multiplied and all of that because it's on that particular hole, which already had so much conversation. And for me, that was a little bit of the heartbreak, and I hated that was such a sub-story of the whole worlds. Is, yes, it sucked, it happened. No one's denying that. But then when it happened on that hole, it just, I don't know. And so it's funny because that's very much was a thought I had, is like, you're right. The punishment didn't fit the crime there, seemingly, but it probably would have fit on most of the other greens out there. So, again, is that just bad luck that it happened in that instance, in that case?
I think you're absolutely right. That's a good point. But there are things we can do to make sure, like I said, we're experimenting with different barriers and things like that. So if somebody does get a bad break like that, they're not going to roll out to infinity. But, imagine on that same hole, right? Isaac's upshot in the finals, big sigh of relief that stayed where it was. Imagine that he had rolled OB, and now he's got to pitch up, and maybe, he has a mistake with the pitch up, and now we go to Nicholas, who is now potentially putting for a tie instead of putting to be within 2, and look at what happens to him. I mean, that whole thing is just a little too random. And I find that a lot of people will say, hey, it's part of the game, it's exciting, don't worry about it. But we need to try to reduce luck and be fair. And a lot of those people, when it happens to them, suddenly are singing a different tune.
Well, and I said this last week, so I'll just repeat it again quickly. I also firmly believe if hole 14 in the exact shape of it and design, if that's hole 3 on the course, I feel like it gets a lot less heat. It's the fact that it factors in that it's so late, just like 17 at USDGC. They are such game changing and round changing and maybe even life changing holes that they're so late in the game that I think that subconsciously or directly plays into account as well. Because if that's hole 3 and all of that happens, everybody else, it sucks. And you still maybe have similar arguments and similar conversations, but it feels like there's so much more time to recover or to move on from it. Whereas it being 14, I think that does factor in as well. That's just my guess.
No, I think that's right. But at the same time, I think, looking at the big picture and where we want to be, we don't want those kind of results anywhere on the course.
Sure.
So let's start working in that direction. But you're right. That's a good point.
So were there any other? Well, I guess we think of recently with Worlds, and then we go to a D-Glow this weekend. Again, a very hilly course, over 4 rounds. Are there any other things that you're seeing that are either troublesome or concern you, or maybe other things that you're seeing that really excite you that disc golf is finally often integrating or taking up? Do you have any other, I don't know, whether I don't want to necessarily call them a pet peeve, but are there other points of interest that you're noticing outside of your designs?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing things that, like I said, I've always wanted to do, and excited about that. And I will put one little asterisk on this no obstacle thing, because I don't think I completely answered Johnny's question. There are holes that don't have trees, but there's enough other things going on that the hole can play well. And so we made an allowance for that. The other version of it is obstacles per hole, including other nuances, which happens to spell option. I know there are people who hate my acronyms. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stop.
I'm done with OPT. Don't worry. Yeah, you know me.
Oh, yeah. You know me. So I think it's hole 13 at the preserve, where, there's a low area. The green is kind of up. The basket's kind of close to the edge. If you throw a 300-foot shot that just stops dead, which most pros should be able to do in their sleep, you're fine. But people really struggle with that hole. The playoff hole or tournament hole number 2, I think it was, at Hornet's Nest, which is out to that island. And it's not a long shot. The island is big, and people whiffed the island. And these are the best players in the world, but those things obviously get in their heads. So there are other things that could happen besides trees that can make the holes work. I mean, personally, that hole at the preserve, I'd rather see a couple trees on it. But having big crowds and having lots of people watching on TV seems to play a factor too. But I do think there are some really good trends going on. Just for one thing, the beautification of the course. We had someone a few months ago say you should read the book about the making of Augusta National and how that all came to be. And, not necessarily part of the playing experience, but golf is a visual game, and the surroundings are important. That's something that Dee's really focusing on a lot now, is how do we beautify the course so that everybody just enjoys being out there more. I think one of the things that I'm working on a lot that I encourage other people to do, I noticed if you look at the PGA Tour driving stats, the best, the middle of the pack guys who are still, the gods of golf, hit the fairway about 61% of the time. right? Which means they're missing the fairway 39% of the time, and now they have to scramble. They're in a bunker, or they're in the tall cut, or a first cut, or second cut, or sometimes they're in the trees, and now they have to scramble. And so if we make a course with rope to where the players are hitting the fairway 61% of the time, then we got that part right. But we completely gave away the scrambling part of it, which is, for these guys, 40% of the game is being able to make that recovery shot from a tricky lie. So I'm starting to see more people catch on to that, and defining landing areas. Whoops, excuse me. Rather than just making long snake shaped fairways, there are a lot of good things that are going on, and a lot of amazing properties that we get to use for disc golf courses now, right? We used to, we got this land left over. Yeah, see if you can do something to it. But cities, counties, states, private landowners, they all see that disc golf is something of value, and they're letting us use properties that match that value. And just let me, for 1 second, say I want to thank Dee for that, because the work that she has done with educating other designers, educating parks departments and property owners, to the value that a course can bring to the community, they're starting to get it, and they're investing more money in disc golf. They see the value in it, and that not only puts us in the position of being able to make better courses, it also puts us in the position of being able to say, I'm sorry, your property is just not good enough to be a pro tour course or be a world championship course. And so we have the ability to say no. And, using her lead, that's how we uplift the industry. The world championships, the majors, the pro tour should use the best courses that we have available. Now, we all know there's a lot of other factors involved. Tournament staffing, infrastructure, sponsorship, it's always going to be part of it. But to see the best events not have the best courses, let's say, is disappointing. And I think we all hope that we can do better, and it'll all catch up.
With the change in some of the rules recently, does that affect your course design? I was thinking of things like hazards, which we didn't have a long time ago, where we now, that was the eye roll. I think I caught an eye roll in there.
There's a fly in the room.
Some sand in your eye.
Some sand in
from the hazard.
Because I see a lot of hazards being implemented right next to baskets, and I'm slowly, me personally, I am slowly coming around to them in certain situations. I'd like to see them more in the middle of fairways, I think, than like big sand. I imagine big sand traps in the middle of a fairway that a player has to get over like a pond almost. But do you have to design, or do you take those rules into account, or because the rules are semi-flexible, do you not really think too much about that?
Well, I think, we're innovating and trying different things, with relief areas and hazards and things like that. And the fact that we're looking for different options and different solutions is a good thing. So then the question is, does that solution make sense? Is it something that we want to use? And in the case of a sand trap, for example, next to a basket, the problem is, if you just call that OB, then maybe they take a meter and they have a tap-in putt, which we don't want. So to say you're going to play from there, that's an improvement. But back to the basic question, does the punishment fit the crime? Right? You missed where you wanted to be by 20 feet, and now you're taking a stroke. So in general, I think anytime we're stroking somebody in that kind of situation, that's an overburdensome penalty. We want to give players incentives and opportunities rather than punishment whenever we can.
Along those lines, in terms of more recent developments, and Johnny kind of alluded to it earlier, is just raised baskets. They've been used for marketing, certainly, as we've seen on the Pro Tour, but just the idea of putting them up in a pedestal, or sometimes you see maybe on lesser events they'll hang it from a tree or do something a little bit more creative in that sense. But is there and Wisconsin kind of famously has a hole on top of a lighthouse at Silver Creek, which has been on the Pro Tour and such. Is there a height that you're comfortable with? Is that something we should continue to explore? Have we reached a maximum height? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we can all agree that there are heights that discriminate against shorter players. And if I can't get my disc out of the basket, that's a problem, okay? I mean, Gannon can get his, but I can't. So, no, from a playing perspective, again, everything's the same. Everything's the same height. All the baskets are the same. And, Johnny talked before about maybe having obstacles on the green, and that kind of thing is also worth looking at. So good on you for that, Johnny. But again, we're trying to make it more interesting. We're trying to make it more varied. So we're going to lift the basket. So that is addressing a problem. Is it the best solution? I prefer working with a slope, right? So that not only will you get different looks on different rounds and for different players, but now I have some control about whether I'm looking at an uphill putt or a downhill putt or a side slope putt. And to me, that adds more to it. The thing that I appreciate about having the basket raised is just the fact that, if it forces you to get the nose up, there are different factors like wind. It's a different situation, and that's a good thing. There are, for example, hole 12, I think it is, at Harmony Bends. That's one where we elevated the basket, but we did it by building a mound. Actually, 2 mounds, one for the day-to-day basket and one for the gold pin. And we had some extra dirt, and I felt like that hole could use a little more interest. And now it's not gimmicky, right? It's natural. It's a mound, and it's covered with grass, and you kind of control how elevated that basket is compared to where you are. So, I mean, there are always 100 different things on every hole to look at and try to make them all work together. So I would prefer to do it naturally rather than just raising the basket up. Yep. Or, like I said, put it on a slope where you're going to get different looks in different situations, and the player, by executing, can change the kind of putt that they're looking at.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm more concerned about the bad kicks we're getting off koozies than anything else.
Would you be okay if those were circular versus square? Let's start there, because I think of the same argument used to be had about number plates many years ago. For those that don't remember what a number plate was on Mach 3.
What's a number plate?
I know.
Let me get out some of my old discs. You can see some of the gashes.
So we start with the koozie. Okay, is it a generic thing that you don't like the kicks off them, and or would you be okay if they were perfectly cylindrical?
I get wanting to recognize the sponsors, and whatever shape it needs to be or material it needs to be, just so people aren't making a good shot and it hits and gets a roll away. I mean, it's just like a putt that chains out and gets the roll away. I'm sure there's a way to engineer it. As a matter of fact, we have something that we're working on that I hope will debut in the next month or two. That I'm hoping will solve some of those problems. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
So, and we won't keep you too much longer here. Do you clearly watch coverage? You analyze particular holes or courses. For you, is there a favorite Pro Tour event you like to watch? You enjoy the course or the challenge it provides?
That's a good question. Let me make two quick clarifications. One, I can go as long as you guys want to on this
Okay.
stuff. I mean, I'm passionate about it, um, and I'll be happy to come back anytime to do more if you want. And I do get to watch some coverage, nowhere near as much as I would like to. It just kind of turned out that this Saturday I was able to do a lot of the work I was doing on the course I'm working on now at my desk. So I was able to work and watch. I wish I could watch more, but I do what I can when I can. I don't think I have a particular course that I really, look forward to or dial into. There are some that I like more than others. There are some that are off the pro tour that I think kind of had their run, and glad they're gone. But I think for me, what I imagine as the venue of the future and the course of the future, um, we're so far from that whatever is on there, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but it's always a little disappointing for me, right? As a player, I'm not one of the guys who's like, well, I can't play up to my top potential, so it's no fun to play, right? But as a designer, um, it's hard for me to look at some courses and get excited about watching it. I loved watching W.R. Jackson every year just because it was a learning opportunity for me, what I did that worked and what didn't. But look, there's a lot of good things going on out there. I don't want to minimize that. And I feel pretty confident that in the next few years, we'll be able to start seeing the kind of venues and tournament courses that are reaching that potential of what I think we can be and what we should be.
We've mentioned it a handful of times, and I think we probably have to ask you the question. W.R. Jackson is changing. Are you going to be involved in any of those changes? Has there been any reach out? I mean, we're
there. Look, the PDJ is in a difficult position. They decided to put out a request for proposals, so it was available to everybody. We certainly put our proposal in, and right now the whole project is in limbo. So
Okay.
obviously, I would love to have the opportunity to go back there and be able to use more of that amazing land and use the things that I've learned since 2005 when we started. But that's all in the hands of the PDGA, and
Okay.
they'll make their decision when they make their decision.
Yeah, and obviously the pine beetle and everything else, that's all part of that if anyone's somehow behind on what's going on there. But John originally did the design on that W.R. Jackson course, which has to feel good, of course, knowing that when people...
How beloved it is.
Yeah, people talk about it being one of their top, either their favorite course, top 3, top 5, whatever. Almost every one of our pros, you would hear through and through again mentioning how much they loved playing there, how much they love the tournaments there, and how much they love that design in the course. So clearly heartbreaking for you and for our players.
Thank you. That's very, very gratifying to hear. Hard to believe that we started that 19 years ago now. So like I said, I've learned a lot since then. I would approach it all very differently. And I will say this: the good news from the people that I've talked to in Appling and the pictures that I've seen, the damage done by the pine beetle was not the devastation that we thought it was going to be. There are a surprising number of hardwoods out there. We tend to think of that property as being almost exclusively pine trees, but it's not. So there's a lot of good stuff left out there. They actually have acquired a little more acreage, Some of the land that was part of the Warner will now be available for the new Jackson. I think maybe some of the Hedrick land might be available. There is tremendous potential out there now. I think it can really be something amazing.
One of the questions that we don't usually field a whole lot of questions beforehand, but I'll read this verbatim. I was text today. Ask him who's the second best course designer and why is it Cale LaVisca? So
who messaged that to you?
I don't know. It came in from our tip line that I don't have, our anonymous tip line.
If you want to do something fun, ask Chat GPT who the best course designers are. The last list that I saw had 2 names I'd never even heard of. I don't know if they even played disc golf. So yeah. So
okay.
That's my answer.
And I know you don't. It's not about specifics. Cale, of course, being funny, but some of our more regular designers, I do think specifically to being some of our top players, whether it's of yesteryear or currently, but Avery Jenkins, Eric McCabe, Cale LaVisca, all come to mind. Obviously, Simon just got done completing a project. Obviously, Paul has had his hand on a couple of different designs. Steve Brinster, and those are just a couple off the top of my head. Ken Klimo has been involved in designs. There's a lot of pros have been in general, but we're talking about some of our more prolific world champions in most of that list that I just said. I know I think you work a little more closely with Steve Brinster than the rest of those guys. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, he is actually a member of the Houck design team now.
Okay, so let's just maybe real quickly address the idea of how do you a lot of people, it's the whole coaching mentality versus a player and all these other things. Can a not so good disc golfer design great disc golf courses?
Well, some people would tell you I'm an example of that. Although I think as they get more old tournament results put in, I think my lifetime earnings have now passed $200. But look, obviously, yes. So, 2 things. Being a player for a long time, and especially at a high level, gives you insights, that other people aren't going to get. At the same time, like golf and like other sports, being a great player doesn't make you a great designer or being a great coach. Dee understands design at a very deep level after almost 20 years now of breathing and eating and sleeping it with me, and she's innovated a lot of great concepts actually, and she's a huge help. Even on a lot of the bigger courses. So, and she's also a great teacher, and teaching is often a great way to learn. But look, if you want to be a better putter, what do? Right? You practice. You look at the best, you study them, you decide, what this person does or that person does that works to you. And you practice and you work on it. If you want to, drive better, you practice. So it's the same thing in design. And as in a lot of life, experience is the best teacher. And I learn with every project. And so we've gotten to the point now where people can study, right? There's enough information out there that you can study. Dee is a great example. She has studied, she has taught, and so she absorbed a lot of it. And now at our workshops and conferences and things like that, we're able to impart that to other people. So there's no substitute for experience. And I feel like I did a decent job. The first course I ever designed 40 years ago at Zilker Park. But I know so much more than I did back then, Like I said, it's like anything else. You have to do it and you have to practice to get better. And people who are serious about it now, they should jump on the opportunity to learn, because it's out there now.
Well, with that's actually kind of a perfect point to wrap up. But first, we have to get in two quick things. One, explain. You've referenced her plenty of times. I know her very well. You'll have to explain who Dee is, and then secondly, tell us, expand on and give the official. We'll call it a sales pitch, but give the official plug and pitch for these conferences and workshops that you're putting together, and when and how they're available and all that stuff.
And
but
the groups,
yeah,
and
the groups and all that. But start by a full explanation of this Dee you speak of for some of those who may not know her.
Okay, and then we're going to hear about Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that opportunity, and I'm much more comfortable giving her resume than I am giving mine. So Dee Lika Houck is my wife and business partner. She is the CEO of Houck Design and actually the founder of Houck Design. Starting the company and creating it as an LLC, that was all her doing. She has a tremendous business background. One of the top Allstate agents in the country for decades. She was the founding president of the Westlake Chamber of Commerce, and she gave all that up to join the glamorous disc golf business. So she has a great entrepreneurial background, and since she joined, I sincerely believe, and most people who are deeply involved will back me up on this, she is more responsible than anyone else for turning disc golf course design into a profession. And parks departments, thankfully now will go, wow, we want to have a good course. Let's get a good designer. And she is greatly responsible for that. She has created the concept of the micro course. She's got them in, I think, 7-8 states and Canada now. She is the founder of Three Disc Golf, Safer, Smarter, More Sustainable, an industry group on Facebook that now has 1,300 members. And 2 years ago, she started the Three Disc Golf Industry Conference. So the first year it was in Austin. Last year it was at Maple Hill. This year it's going to be in New Orleans. It's November 7th through the 11th, and people can do all or part of it. But last year was just tremendous. We have all kinds of presentations. She's been at the Three Disc Golf thing for 8 years. This year's conference is going to focus more on a parks angle. We have multiple parks director and parks people who will be presenting. And as well as last year, we had a great pro player panel with Sarah, Simon, Casey, and Finley Buchanan Jacobs. That was a huge hit and very informative. So we'll have a great pro panel again today. I know Sarah's confirmed. I think we're pretty close on Simon. So, like I said, if people are serious about course design, it's great to do it online. It's great to read and whatever else, but to be there in person and to meet other people and have those discussions, it's really worthwhile. So we encourage everybody to come to that. More information than you can probably imagine.
And that's exactly what I was just going to, I'll post it in the chat here. I see on the a disc golf discussion group on Facebook is where it is. I'm just looking for a direct link. 3DG Con, so on New Orleans, as you just said, or New Orleans, I guess, depending on where you're from. Is there a specific link or site or something that we can direct people to right now and I can put in the chat?
If somebody is a member of that group, there's going to be, I think, an event page there, and we will make sure that we get something posted on the Houck Design Facebook page and on the Houck Design website in the next couple of days. A lot of the details still coming, and our new website is houckdesigndiscgolf.com.
All right.
So,
Let me,
or if you go to the old houckdesign.com, there'll be a link there too.
all right. Houck.
And
Helps if I spell it right. I'll get that in there. Houck Design. All right. I want to
We'll
get
put
it
that
in
in the
chat.
show notes as well.
Yeah, I want to get that in the chat.
houckdesigndiscgolf.com.
Yeah, houckdesigndiscgolf.com.
And on Facebook, it's John Houck, Houck Design.
Okay. Again, because it's been far too long before having you, we could probably go on for another 6 hours. However, even we have limits to our podcast, believe it or not, as long as we can go. I have to just say thank you. First and foremost, we both really appreciate you joining us and providing your insight. Obviously, some of the background in history. It's something that people like Johnny and I take for granted, the work and the effort and the knowledge and the experience that you've brought to disc golf for all these years. Whereas I feel like a lot of our newer either fans or spectators, players, all of those, they may see a course, but really don't have the full story as to how or where it came about, or the history of course design, and even where we're heading in the future. And you guys continue to be at the forefront and pushing people and educating people, which I think is one of the greatest components, is that this is for the future and that there's more people that will be armed with the knowledge and the principles and the background and experience that you've accumulated all over all of these years. And hopefully that's going to continue to just breed more good disc golf courses, or great disc golf courses, throughout the country and around the world.
Well, that is the hope. You're very kind. I appreciate that very much. It's been a pleasure for me to talk to you guys and to your audience. I really appreciate it. You guys do a great job. I love the questions. I love your insights. You guys, I've been doing it forever, but you guys have been around too. You know what you're talking about, and it's a real treat for me to be able to have this kind of discussion with people who get it. So good on you. Thank you so much, both of you. And Johnny, really appreciate everything that you've done, and look forward to talking about course design anytime somebody wants to listen.
Awesome. Well, we know that hopefully you'll continue to talk to other podcasts that are going to continue to have, I'm sure, a different array of questions for you and pick your brain even more. And as I already posted, I think on the chat, it's all too obvious that we'll just have to have you again sometime soon.
Well,
and
we
can dig into more stuff at that point.
Thank you. Let me put one more thing on the record. I'm normally starting to pass out around 11. But that's when Dee gets her second win, so she gets a lot more podcasts and videos than I do typically, and she wants to make sure you guys know that she is a big Smashbox fan too.
Oh,
well, thank you, Dee.
Thank you. We appreciate that. That's very kind. And well, we're right in that second win territory, that's for sure, for most people. If you're here live, John, we appreciate it. Thank you again for everything you guys are both doing, and then you guys continue to do with the continued education and the conferences and the workshops and all the educational ways that people can grow and thrive in becoming better designers. Thank you for jumping on tonight, and like I said, we'll have to have you again sometime soon.
Well, we'd be happy to do it. And I don't know if Kayla LaVisca listens, but he could come down to New Orleans and be on the pro panel.
Yeah, maybe he needs some tips. That's for sure.
Oh, I don't know.
No,
he just put in a course up in Green Bay. I only spoke with one person about it, but they gave rave reviews about it.
Yeah. That's because
so
instead of pictures of baskets out there and fairways, Kale just puts like 18 shots of him out there.
Headshots instead of the T signs?
He's out there modeling. That's how he's winning. I don't know. All right, John. Again, appreciate you joining us. Have a good night. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
John.
God bless.
John Houck. Again, I feel bad that
Hall of Famer John Houck.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are tens of thousands of people that will listen to this in one way, shape, or one form or another and not realize also just the full resume. There could be an entire podcast just on his resume. So really glad to have him join us and provide some insight here tonight.
Yeah, and if you're interested, obviously, in becoming a course designer, or you think that's an avenue you'd like to go down, by all means, reach out to the Houck Design Group, because there's so many, they have so many resources and people that are available, maybe locally if you're lucky. If not, then, then maybe you're lucky in that you can be the Houck designer of your area. I don't know. So
get with him and with the program, as they say. All right. With that, thank you again to John, and as he referenced to his wife Dee, for everything they're doing. Let's run through somewhat quickly. We'll run through some results of events that took place. Obviously, kind of a unique weekend in that we didn't have an official Pro Tour Elite Series event going on. However, we saw a lot of A tiers, including I almost call it a silver event, a qualifying event, a Q Series event. But looks like you're going to start out in West Virginia with an A tier. What do you got here, Johnny?
Yeah, the West Virginia Open, driven by Innova. MPO Harper Thompson wins this by a single stroke over the aforementioned Casey White. Casey clearly just missed it out by a single stroke, and 3 strokes over Lucas Hess. 4th place, Colton Montgomery. 5th place, Matt Hammerstein. Some other notable names in there. 7th place, Andrew Fish. 9th place, Chandler Fry. And anyone below that, they'll probably be embarrassed if I mention their name. So we're going to move over to FPO. Sarah Holcomb, someone we talked about again earlier tonight. She won this one by 5 strokes over Lauren Butler. In 3rd place, Juliana Corver, the legend herself, winning $135. So that is your West Virginia Open. And obviously it looked like there were a couple other A tiers, but most of them, some of them overseas, some of them on the West Coast, they didn't get quite the attendance because of the Worlds to D-Glow. People tended to stay in that general vicinity.
Yeah, if you were within that path or around one of those two, you had a better chance of attracting some of our top pros that were out competing.
Such as the Discraft CCR Open, fueled by Great Lakes Disc. This was out of Holt, Michigan. The tournament director was Wesley Scheinvar?
Good old Wes, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever pronounced his last name out loud, though. So, winning this one is GT Hancock. He won by 6 strokes, taking home $2,630 over Jesse Niemanen. Jesse was 1 stroke over Connor Rock. Luke Taylor, the young phenom that we've been talking a lot about lately, Joel Freeman, Chandler Kramer, and Emerson Keith. So that is a 5-way, if I count that right, tie for 3rd place at 27 under. In 8th place, Drew Gibson, Nicholas Gill, Paul Kranz kind of round out your top 10 players. And
just as a note to this is where this is the event that ultimately had the most overall star power that you see from the Pro Tour. Obviously, located not too far from D-Glow and all of that. And also with note that GT Hancock shot that very first round, which was it a 20-hole layout, and he shot an 18 or 19 under? Yeah. Or no, I'm thinking of Zach Arlinghouse. I apologize.
Yeah,
Arlinghouse. But nonetheless, GT Hancock's opening round was also insane, as I believe Zach Arlinghouse. I was getting my events mixed up. But
Arlinghouse, I think, was not the CCR. I think it was the CCO. No, the Flying Pig Open.
It was the Flying Pig. I also, while I'm here, just for the sake of why not, during, I think, the first or second round of Worlds, we cut to GT closing out his round. I think it was at Ivy Hill, so it must have been second round. Cut to him closing out his round, and in my ear, this is a little more, again, typical behind the scenes, but in my ear, check out the scorecard. Here's GT Hancock closing out his round with whatever it was. And that's what I'm told in my ear, and that's what I repeat, all just to see Levi Hancock actually putting out. So an official apology. I never got around to it that week because there was never a good time to during Worlds. So my official apologies to them both for that mishap. Also, not my fault. I'm 100% passing the blame because that was exactly what was fed into
production
me.
Under the bus.
Mahmoud Burhani, specifically, our producer, he officially said that, and then I watched the person then retrieve the disc. I'm like, no, that's not GT. Nope, thanks. You made me look dumb again. Yeah. I don't need help looking dumb, people. I got that all on my own. But this was one of those funny times. Something is fed to you.
And you just, without thinking a lot of times, because you trust.
Yeah, of course.
And everyone's going to make a mistake.
And it's a mistake.
There's a chance that he was told it was GT Hancock and it was really Levi from maybe the replay op or one of the PAs or something.
Yeah, so I just finally, this all seems so fitting, especially after GT winning this weekend, but also fitting for me to get a correction out there. All right, now over to the FPO side.
Down over to FPO. That was actually a pretty exciting event. Owen Scoggins wins this, shooting 27 under par, besting Kristen Tatar. Kristen shoots a 10:41 second round in order to come roaring back, because she was down by 5 strokes after the first round. I think she was in like 7th place or something after first round. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm not going to. But anyway, so she comes and shoots a 10:41 to get basically within, I think, 3 strokes of Owen. And then final round, Owen shoots a 55. Kristen shoots a 54 to then be a 2-stroke win for Owen Scoggins. So Owen takes home $1,432. Kristen in second place. Cadence Burge takes third place, shooting a 994, a 986, and 1,003. And she's a 950 rated golfer. 949.
50 points above her, or 40-some points above her rating for the weekend?
That's a heck of a round. And we've seen her quite a bit on bits and pieces on the tour. So she's you recognize her, Manny, because she's got the long red hair and the big glasses that she always wears, kind of a signature of hers. She bests Chantel Badinsky by 3 strokes. 5th place, Vanessa Van Dyken at 17 under par for $450. Yeah,
and a very sizable field overall at 35 FPO players. We see a few of the Michigan locals who have come out. I see like a Jessica Oleski, for instance. Nikki Taylor, Luke Taylor's mom, competing in the event as they hail out of...
well, I hope he caddied for her.
Yeah, he better have.
I think she's owed that.
Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Was that not a Q Series event? The Q on my keyboard is broken, so I couldn't Google it.
You're not even joking.
No, I'm not. I told that story a few weeks ago. But that was
this is the keyboard that the Q is broken on?
Yeah.
We'll take a look at it.
Was this or was this not a Q?
I don't know. It doesn't say Q Series on it. So
which is what's surprising me, because I thought it was.
Maybe.
Is somebody on the chat?
I don't know the Q. You know what? The whole Q Series, I don't really care if Q or not. This was the event this weekend.
Well, I get that, but I'm just saying there's implications.
Sure.
If it was in fact something about a finish and a tour finale.
Tell me on this list who cares about the Q Series right now.
Connor Rock.
Yeah,
I think does.
There's a handful.
There's
probably
a handful that do.
Yeah. We're not up to date on any of those Q Series numbers. I don't know where I can find the Q Series numbers.
I do. I know where you can find
them.
Probably
Statmando.
Yeah, Statmando has
Statmando always has it.
That would have been a good place to start. Anyway.
And there's no Q in Statmando, so you should be fine.
So I should be able to click on it. All right.
Yeah.
What else? All right. Some other events. Any other A tiers?
No, that's kind of it. I mean, there are 1 or 2 other little A tiers, but most of them have names that most people aren't going to know of. So we'll go to the Colorado State Disc Golf Championship just because I already saw who won on that. Wild guess, Terry, who won this one?
Joe Revere.
Joe Revere.
Shocker.
He wins by 6 strokes. He's 1,000
in the MPO field.
In the MPO, after winning MP40 this year, of course, as we all know. He started out with a slow 995, then he ramped it up to a 1044 and a 1058. He's got to shake the rust off with as little as he plays.
Yeah.
So he bested Lucas Carmichael and Nate Metzler. So congratulations to friend of the show, Joe Revere, who's probably might be his last big hurrah before school starts. Depending on what's happening, because he's a teacher, as we know. In FPO, Haley Huber wins this, declining cash. She won by 22 strokes, declined cash. So the people who were tied for second each took home $500.
Damn.
after shooting plus 20 to Haley's negative 2. Now, Haley is, again, an 895 rated player, so she's probably...
Which is the same rating as the other two, essentially, too, which is crazy.
It is, but I'm guessing Haley, based on her score compared to the other women, probably is shooting for maybe an AM Worlds Championship next year, which is why she declined the cast, because she shot a 908, a 959, and then a 961. So a slow start, but some pretty good second and third round for an 895 rated round. So congratulations to Haley Huber.
I did find some Q Series updates. GT Hancock earned 100 points and has 285 points in the Q Series, which makes him, I believe, the outright leader of the Q Series.
And I don't
Connor Rock's in third, Chandler Kramer's in fourth, Kevin Kiefer's in sixth, Freddie Mesa is in seventh. Colton Montgomery, Braden Sides, Zachary Nash, those are all people that do care about Q Series, about qualifying.
I'm sure they do. There's a lot of people
just throwing that out there.
There are people who do care about it, because it is going to be very I won't say very difficult, but more difficult than it has been in past years to get your touring card. So this will help some of these players that maybe for the Pro Tour events don't quite usually get up into that upper 20 or 30 person that you really kind of need to be consistently to get your tour card. Yeah. So it definitely has ramifications. I just didn't know what they were.
Okay. Well, I now tell you that GT, that puts him in the front of the Q Series qualifying list overall. And Ed is officially chimed in saying it is, in fact, which I gathered with GT getting the 100 points. So nonetheless, congrats to Wes and the whole crew putting on the event. I believe Crew 42 has that on post-production. Is a post I saw earlier from them today. So go out there. You'll be able to watch the action on their channel.
So let's get into a little bit about Mexico.
Yeah.
Where is it, Terry? Where is Mexico?
I learned some geography this weekend. Let's start there.
You did.
The number one thing, and I know, and maybe you knew this. You've never been there.
I've never been to Mexico.
And you didn't study Spanish.
Nope. I was a French kid. Bonjour.
I had no idea.
That they spoke Spanish in Mexico?
No, I risked sounding more ignorant than normal here. I had no idea upon arriving to Mexico City, for instance, which I think is the 5th largest city in the world.
It's huge.
That's what I Googled months ago anyway, when the first part of the trip started. I had no idea that we would be at such elevation.
It's very. I do know Mexico is mountainous.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think it depends on where you are. Clearly, if you're closer to the coast, I think it tends to be a little bit closer to sea level, but that's not always the case. So
Mexico City is at over it's at 7,349 feet of elevation.
Wow, so is that kind
higher
of
than the
Denver?
Mile High City? Yes.
Yeah.
5,280 Mile High City. Yeah. It's higher than Denver considerably. I had no idea. I know almost nothing about Mexico, so let me be very clear there. So some of you are probably rolling your eyes and saying, "Yeah, no shit, idiot." That's fine. I just had no idea. And we remained at various elevations. I think at one point to get down to Coquioc, which is in the state of Morales, without traffic, it's supposed to be at about an hour to an hour and a half southwest. It probably is closer to 2 with traffic, 2 hours. Even that, I think at one point, even on that trip from Mexico City to where we were, we got as high as 9,000 feet. So just really interesting as a first-time visitor and not having any idea of set elevation to know that obviously the discs are going to react differently. That's number one. And then just everything about your breathing, your drinking habits, all of those things get impacted by being at elevation. And clearly players can be a lot more accustomed to that versus this guy that just showed up having no idea. Not like I would have prepared or done anything differently, but I just literally had no idea that Mexico City comes in at 7,300 feet of elevation, specifically where I was for the weekend. I want to just double check that. is actually only at 1,400 meters. Oh, great. Come on, give it to me in feet. About 4,000 to 4,800 feet. So a little less than
under Denver.
Yeah, then. Just under Denver, so to speak. So, yeah, it's so anyway. So geography and topography and all of that aside, you and I had a conversation just before the podcast. We'll get more into that, but first and foremost, Fabienne, Raul, and everyone else. More than 100 people there as competitors. Fabienne is the gentleman that originally had reached out to me that is doing a ton of stuff down there. He has worked with Dynamic Discs for a little more than a year and has recently now is transitioning into, I apologize, I don't know his exact title, but he's transitioning into a role that is part of the PDGA in an official capacity and is no longer working with Dynamic Discs. And what they have as a community, what the Mexico disc golf scene has is, of course, in its early beginnings, but is so damn impressive. And it's impressive because not only are they, I feel like they are growing quickly with a lot of excitement, but it's so great because it's everything that you and I also love and experience about the early goings of disc golf when we found it 30 years ago. And the fact that there were some people played one and some people played 2 rounds. It was kind of a flight situation, various flights almost on day one of competition, which was in this case Friday. When that was done, there was a distance competition that a bunch of people all gathered around, and there was a little bit of a vote, I guess, as to how people were selected to see men and women then go up and do a distance competition. Coincidentally, in a ball golf driving range, so it was perfect.
Did you win?
No, thankfully my name was not called and I was not part of it. But then everybody's sitting there just watching it and spectating it, and cheering on every single person that stepped up.
That's awesome.
Whether they threw 300 feet or some at almost 500 feet, everybody was just cheering them on and having a really good time with it. So that was really cool to see. Another component, and this reminds me so much of some early goings 6-8 years ago at PCS, as many of you now know, which has obviously become an incredible event and venue. The event was officially Friday and Saturday, so we could focus on the party Saturday night so that you had Sunday as your final day of the weekend, so to speak. That's exactly the way PCS was. For so many years. You played earlier so that the payoff was the community and the involvement and the people getting together and the celebration that was the final night of the event. So this was just like that.
Very different than what we're seeing on the tour now and a lot of tournaments that we have.
100% different, because now, whether it's a B tier or an A tier or even a pro tour stop, we've grown up and we've professionalized in a lot of ways. And this obviously has a little bit to do with, at one point, how COVID helped shape things, but also how tee times and media have shaped things, so that you have someone, an FPO champion, crowned at noon. There's not a special, massive award ceremony, because we immediately then, we have an interview and all that, but then we get pretty much right into MPO action. And at the end of the MPO action, here's the top 1 or 2 players. Here's the crown champion. And within a half hour, almost everyone's off the property.
Sure.
I mean, that's just the way it is. That's especially the way it is at even smaller events that host some form of a tee time thing, as you experienced probably this weekend, and I've experienced at every event I've had the chance to play, that it's, the round's done, you submit your scorecard, there's no standing over a TD or trying to add up scorecards, and then there's just not that time when people are getting together and staying together, because it's like, you'll PayPal me? Yeah, I don't need to talk to anyone else here, I'm out. It's just different, and there's a lot of pros that have come with that, and there's definitely a lot of cons. But when I was experiencing specifically in Mexico this weekend, the golf almost felt secondary to the community, to the people, to the joy of surrounding yourself and encouraging and being around others. And for that, and I've been saying this for years, that this has been what we've been seeing. And so to go to a place like I did this weekend and to have the experience that we did, and it helps, I'll admit, it helps that this particular weekend, there's 110, 112 players. Mm-hmm. We're in kind of like an HOA/subdivision, where then we're at a golf course. And the disc golf course is on the golf course. And so when you get to that area, a lot of people would get Airbnbs and places within that community. And everybody stayed pretty much within probably a 10 or 15 minute range of there. So that kind of helps set up. And then there's a restaurant literally less than 150 feet from the Tee of One to the clubhouse restaurant. Mm. So whether it was before your round and you had extra time or it was after your round, you just walked right over to the restaurant, and then it was filled with golfers among other patrons. But it was just so cool to have that opportunity to have that interaction. And then maybe one of the best parts about the whole scenario was, besides the Saturday night party, was there's also within this little community, think of basically I'd compare it to like being at a mall at a food court.
Yeah, I think I saw that picture.
Yeah, this is like an outdoor food court where there was 6 or 8 different restaurants. And at one point you would go there at night, and 40 to 60 of the 100 competitors were at this food court all eating, and you had all these different options to eat from, all these different styles of restaurants and types of food, but everybody congregated there and then stayed there for a few hours.
Did you learn the Spanish word for chicken?
Isn't that polo?
It's polo, yeah. That tends to be your favorite food usually.
Yes. I made it very clear
that you were looking for something with chicken.
That I wanted chicken, but more importantly, that you're not going to outspice me. I know, there clearly is that component to Mexican food. I was there for all of it. There was nothing that was going to outspice me, and I think I lived up to that. So. I some other day, maybe in my own podcast, will go on for hours, but it was incredible. A couple other quick things that they added that were, you had an option to play a doubles round together on the day before the event, so that was kind of offered, which sometimes we've seen many years ago. There was an optional singles round. On Sunday, there was an optional doubles round again for the people that were capable of getting up and throwing frisbees again, which I was not there for. So that was on Sunday. Like they made it such an event,
what exactly did you do down there?
I think Modelo and no, I ultimately, when it was all said and done, part of the overall experience of being there, I ended up filming all 3 rounds of MPO golf.
Great.
So the format was really unique for the MPOs in that they played 1 round on Friday, and then on Saturday, mid to late morning, there was a round, and then they went back out Saturday afternoon. So that was where the 3 rounds came in. This is on a golf course that had plenty of OB rope, but also played relatively quickly. And things moved along swiftly, which it would have been much more draining to think about playing those 2 rounds, especially with the heat and the elevation on Saturday. But it was tolerable, even out there as filming in the sun and whatnot. So ultimately, I'm going to put together all 3 rounds of the coverage and get that released. Maybe there'll be a separate commentary version where we can get some Spanish-speaking superstars in there to do it as well. I will not be part of that.
Sure.
But maybe I'd love to get out 2 different versions just so that we can, hopefully appeal to even more people. Ultimately, surprisingly, only 4 countries represented. We had U.S., obviously Mexico, a very large contingency from Colombia.
Yep.
And met a ton of incredible
big,
people.
very big into frisbee right now.
Yeah, and then also 1 gentleman from Denmark who is there taking in all the action as well. So so many incredible people. So that's what I can say about it. I'll save more details for when the footage comes out, and then maybe I can talk up a little bit more results and footage and things of that nature. But the Airbnb that we were at, that basically the tournament director crew kind of put together, and where the tournament staff was at, most of it was just off of I'm gonna call it 300 feet. I don't even know if it was 300 feet from the 18th green.
Wow.
And nothing for nothing, arguably one of the nicest, most vacation-like Airbnbs you could probably possibly find in that city. So it was pretty cool. Everything from
I saw a picture
from the pools to the outdoor games to you could definitely throw a disc from our back porch onto the actual disc golf course. So that's how close we were, and that's also not far from where the party was at. So that is in a nutshell the experience. The people though are what made it so worth it. And tonight, this has a payoff. Tonight, you as a Patreon member, if you are, have an opportunity to win one of 50, and a few have already taken out of circulation. Most of them were sold, but one of 50 dynamic disc suspects with my stamp on it.
Feels nice.
With the tournament and my stamp on it, and kind of commemorating the idea of my first trip ever to Mexico for any reason whatsoever. Of course, it's fitting that it was for disc golf, and it is a trip that I'll truly never forget. So
feels good in the hand.
Fly any line you put it on.
Wow.
Yeah. Good for all
skill levels.
All skill levels. Yeah. But yeah, it does feel good in the hand. So anyway, Patreon members tonight will have the opportunity to, I think I only have a couple of these left, like literally like 2 or 3, but one of them is going to be given away tonight. So
Patreon.com/SmashboxTV. I have not pulled the names yet. I didn't even realize that was going to be a giveaway.
Yep.
But I will probably pull the names about 5 to 10 minute into the after show, which we'll be getting into soon. So if you want to be eligible for that, quickly go to patreon.com on the web. Do it on the web, by the way. If you're an iOS person, like an iPhone, unsubscribe and resubscribe via the web, because this way Apple won't take 30% of whatever you give to any creators, not just us. But if you do it for anyone that has a Patreon, don't do it through iOS if you have the choice. If you really want to, fine, go ahead. But just saying.
Are you saying it's no longer cool to be an Apple fanboy or girl?
It's never been cool. Well, it used to be cool a long time ago, but it hasn't been cool. They're the big monster now.
Yeah,
but I mean, so is Google, so is everybody else. They're all big monsters. So anyway, patreon.com/SmashboxTV.
Yes. So thank you very much to Fabienne and also Dynamic Disc, the presenting sponsor of the event. And I know they help make all this possible. PDGA Latin America, PDGA, Doug Bjerkes and his wife Noemi were there. And I got to spend a little bit of time with them. He's taking official vacation to be part of that. He put an interesting stat that he has, out of the last 5 disc golf tournaments he's played, 4 of them have been in Mexico. So, and that's kind of at one point, I look at me playing, whether it was in Thailand or Estonia or wherever these last few years, I'm starting to play more events outside of the country than inside, and I'm here for it. So, thank you to everybody that helped make it possible. All right. A couple other notes. One thing that just popped up on the PDGA saying, again, I think it's October 1st is the time that you have to get your bids in if you are hoping to host a PDGA major.
Yes.
The proposals are there, Johnny?
Yeah, that's true. There's an article out there that says seeking hosts for 2026 and 2027 majors. The bids are due October 1st. Now, I don't know if the bids are due October 1st for both those years or primarily for 2026.
No, I think they are.
Is it? So it's going to be, you have to get it out like the 3 years in advance then. Okay, perfect. Or technically, I guess 2 if you're 2027. Yeah. But so bids are due October 1st. So if you're looking to host one of the majors, and we're talking Tim Selinsky, PDGA Amateur, Masters, Junior Worlds, the Pro Worlds, U.S. Women's, anything like that. and you have a group that is, or a group of courses that can support that's solid, fill out the proposal, look at the bid package, reach out to the PDGA, because even if they can help you, if they look at, you might not quite have all your crap together, but if they look at your area and say, you know what, we could probably work with this team, they will, I think, actually help you with the bid proposal. They will help you with some of that stuff. So by all means, if you think you have it, submit it.
Yes, do so. And it's funny because immediately I see a post where someone says, La Mirada Regional Park in Southern California. You got to do more than just like throw out a place.
It's not just a comment?
No, it's just more than a comment. I get it. That's a fan or a resident or a nearby, spectator or whatever. Yeah, there's so much more to it. So make sure you do that. Speaking of majors, what about that Am Slam? I'm talking about one Ryan Mon. A note to this weekend, he has officially accepted cash. I know that was obviously a big conversation. He accepted cash this weekend. He took a tied for second at the Seneca event and accepted cash. So he's officially a pro in that capacity. Two other notes that came about just as the show was getting started tonight that both one impacts the other. The Memorial Championship presented by Discraft is officially moving up about 6 weeks.
Moving up. So it has always traditionally been the first week in March.
Yeah, last week of February into roughly the first week of March.
Yep, right around there. So now you're talking end of January?
Mid-January.
Mid-January.
Yeah, mid-January. Now, Vista del Camino.
What about all the snow?
I'm going to bring my shovel. I'm going to bring one on the plane. Be like, but it's January here. Thankfully, I've been there for the Shelley Sharp, and I know better, Johnny, that they don't have snow there in January. And Vista del Camino, as a park property, is undergoing a complete facelift, overhaul, makeover, everything. I don't know if I could go as far as saying it's unrecognizable, but at one point I saw some version of a plan. And
is disc golf involved in that plan?
Disc golf will be there.
Okay.
So then we can finally quit talking about the slippery tee pads and hopefully get new ones. But disc golf will be there, but probably a completely different course.
Okay.
And this is at least a full year project. Who knows if it'll go even longer, but I believe it's slated for at least a full year project. So with that, I know the guys over at Spinners, guys and girls over at Spinners, have been talking to the PDGA and are looking into all the details. But they made an announcement just today, which I knew about earlier. Couldn't tell you guys. I keep secrets. They made an announcement today, though, that it will in fact be moving. Let me see if I can find. I want to just give you the exact.
Yeah, moving.
But it's moving up in terms,
which is going to be really interesting because traditionally it's been obviously early March.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, it was kind of. I mean, it was on the tour, but even after it was off the tour, it was still kind of in the path
for sure.
Now it's dead square in the off season.
The off season, yeah.
Yeah. So is it going to become more of a regional thing? Because last year we saw Gannon Burr.
Last 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, and all those guys. So are they going to come out of their hibernation in January and make a trip down to Arizona? What type of pros are we going to see? Is it going to...
Yeah.
I will be very interested to see the turnout on that.
I completely agree. If you like the weather and you like being there, it's still going to be a destination no matter what. Mm-hmm. The question is the caliber of some of the players. I think that's a very fair question as to who will or won't, we'll say go out of their way as much for it. It's officially going to be scheduled the 16th through the 19th, and look for registration to open on Disc Golf Scene in October. Here in I guess a month now. We're only a month away from October, which is crazy. Also, then that directly then impacts the idea of the Shelley Sharp, which is another event that usually pretty much takes place right around that very weekend. Instead, kind of unofficially kicks off the season in some capacity. For some, I know for me and my coverage. They also then, right after the Memorial, announced that the Shelley Sharp will be moving to February 14th through the 16th in 2025. Vista del Camino is being renovated early next year, and we had to move our events around to avoid park closures. We apologize in advance for any inconvenience, but save the date. So ultimately, both of the events, are moving up significantly, but those two are flip flopping in a sense of the order in which they're had. Okay. So throwing that out there, letting everybody know that that's what we are seeing, and we'll keep you posted. I'm sure at some point we'll probably check in with Keith Murray or some of the others over there at Spinners for more details, just because those have become staples of off-season coverage, and or people have, I feel like, at least for my channel, have come to kind of expect those. So those are certainly worth noting and planning for.
The only other news we have from the PDGA, the 2025 A-tier request form is now available. So if you're interested in hosting, if you don't think you can pull off one of the big majors, but you really want to start to ramp up your tournament directing skills and your tournament, we'll say, spotlight, maybe think about becoming an A-tier. So the 2025 A-tier request form is now available. That A-tier information is usually announced later in the year, so get those A-tier requests in now so that the PDGA can take care of that.
Yeah, and I know that again, this goes back to what I was just saying about the memorial. I know they're already in talks with the PDGA, and because it's such an early season event, I think there's some conversation about trying to get that locked in even earlier. And I'm interested also to hear what comes of the Maricopa event and timing wise, and if that's something. But those are all things we'll get figured out. Big events being planned over in Samui. Last weekend in January is when we're talking about the Samui Swine, the following weekend being Chiang Mai, and I think the following weekend after that being Sam Reap in Cambodia. So as a little Southeast Asia tour, I may or may not be at all those, just saying, that's what we're looking at come next year for a Southeast Asia tour. We'll get those announced. In less than, we'll in an Arizona representative way, really unfortunate if you've been to the Shelley Sharp or if you've been to the memorial in the last years, one of the kind souls that's usually has been there operating the check-in booth / announcing the names. I'm talking about Sarah Ketz. She had passed away just a couple days ago. Super kind soul that was always ready to pump you up and give you plenty of hugs and plenty of excitement. It was noted. Jennifer Allen had posted it as she had become friends with her in the last few years, moving to Arizona. Just a incredible soul, and unfortunately she passed away over the weekend. So all of our thoughts go out to her, thinking about the Shelley Sharp Memorial and the memorial. Unfortunately, Sarah will not be with us for those, but certainly will be memorialized within those two events, as she's been such a crucial part of those for the last couple of years. And another fellow Smashie experiencing a devastating heartbreak, Ben Ferris, had his mother. He's been a Smashie forever.
Oh, we've known
and
Ben
a good friend
so long,
from day one, really, of Smashbox. His mother passed away of a heart attack a couple nights ago, 100% unexpected at night. So big hugs and love. As I told Ben today, or as he pointed out, that's I hate that he joins the club that I'm in of not having losing your mother so early. So we love you, Ben, and
definitely.
We're here for you, buddy, if you need anything. So definitely a big loss. So with that, we can close out our regular show, though. And in the after show, if we've got other things to talk about, we also have the Patreon giveaway. There's a lot of other random things that I believe are.
I've got something for you in the after show.
I was going to say random things that are beyond disc golf, because I feel like it's that time of season. There's other sports. There's other things, kids, schools, sports, whatever. All of that. We got more in the after show. So with that, huge thanks and shout out to John and D. Houck. We appreciate them more than most will ever know, but thank you for everything you guys are doing to continue to push disc golf course design and everything else that's inclusive of the design and the overall management of courses. As you guys push that forward, we very much appreciate it. The whole disc golf world does. They don't even know just how much they really should appreciate you. So we're happy to shine light on that. So for podcast 522, for Johnny V and myself, I'm the disc golf guy. Thanks again to our friends in Mexico. We'll have an after show, and we'll see you there when you step inside the Smashbox.
Thank you to our $2 and above patrons. Your name is listed below in the credits. If you are interested in being listed as a producer in the Smashbox TV credits and supporting this and other fine podcasts, please visit patreon.com/SmashboxTV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smashbox TV Podcast 522's After Show.
I have a gift for you. A true gift.
Do I want it?
Yes, I think you do.
Oh. Is it a fan?
It's not a fan for down here.
Okay.
Although we could get one over here where it wouldn't. The only thing I worry about a fan is the microphones.
Yeah,
but if it's blowing this way, it shouldn't be nearly as much.
I think
so
if you got a noise gate, maybe
I'll work
we
on
should be
that.
good. I almost brought one today, and then I ran out of time. Huh. All right. Give me a hint on this gift.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of them.
Oh, is it a Frisbee?
It is.
Okay.
It's a Frisbee. It's right over here. This this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I went up to one of our favorite tournaments.
Yep.
The Northwoods Open.
Sure.
And I participated.
Yes, you did.
I won't say I played, but I did participate.
You threw Frisbees.
Oh, God, I threw a lot of them.
If Ed Hedrick can only change it from most fun wins to most throws wins.
Oh, my God, I would have won.
Okay.
Maybe every division.
Okay.
But this is... You know what was special about this year's Northwood?
It was the 30th anniversary.
It was the 30th anniversary.
Which made me think, I was at Northwoods Open number 2 in 1995.
Yep. Our good friend, we mentioned him quite a bit, Steve Held, he's been to 25 of the 30 of them.
Okay.
But this year, they had a special disc. It is a 30th anniversary disc.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought that it would be a good idea to get you one.
Thank
Because
you.
It is one of the places you have always enjoyed, and there was only I don't remember. Those were originally for the sponsors of the event, got that. But then they had a few extras, so I talked to Michelle, and I kind of told her, I was like, hey, I'd love to get one for me and Terry, just whatever. I do have another one over here for me. But I figured it was a disc that you would not have any other way. So
well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Northwoods
Mike
Open.
and Michelle. Let's give yours away tonight on the show.
No, I don't want to do that.
Either do I.
I gave away enough stuff up there, like Dignity and Strokes. And
Thank you. This is a Mako 3. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
It's funny because I went into the pro shop, which is beautiful as always, and I said, man, I'm kind of surprised you don't have any 30th anniversary discs. And they said, well, we do.
Hold on, idiot. We do.
Well, they said we do, but they were for sponsors. And you can sponsor the event at like $100 or $150 in order to also get your whole to sponsor a hole, as well as get a little early entry and that type of thing. So there were a few extras.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's very cool. One of my favorite in full color discs came from there because they have this incredibly beautiful and iconic. They got a bunch of beautiful and iconic holes out there, but the final hole is down. It's a little tiny peninsula. It would be interesting to show it exclusively to John Houck.
I thought of it, but you wouldn't almost recognize the hole, Terry. They've modified behind the basket.
Okay, well, it's very iconic. And anyway, the one of the year I won happened to be one of the coolest trophies, along with one of the coolest discs they ever had made. So apparently, I won it in just the right year. I think what was that, 05 or 06 or something like that. But very cool. So I guess Gail LaVisca, we'll let him win it this year.
He won it. He beat our good friend Scott Burtard.
Scotty Too Hottie,
who made a great run at winning. There were tee times this year, and so when I finished, and when my division finished, MP40, the MPO was on about hole 12 or 13. And I got all my stuff together because it's a 4-hour drive, so we decided that we were going to leave that on Sunday rather than spend the night on Monday, which we could have been at the cabin. And so then we get on the road, we say goodbye to everybody. By the time we're on the road, the MPO are on hole, I think it's like 16 or 17 out of 27 holes. And our friend Scotty's making a run. He got a hole in one on one of the holes, so hole 18, which is I don't say a little, but it's a hyzer shot, probably about 250 feet, 220 feet. And then he said that, and this is, a little behind the scenes, you kind of have to know Northwoods. There is the hole that goes to right towards the cabins, the long one, that the long hole, the long pin goes down.
Yeah.
Scotty hit the pin on that one from
Jam.
Yeah. And then I think he hit the basket on one more. I think maybe it wasn't 25, the flag hole, which is a pretty iconic hole that a lot of people probably know because it seems to be the most social media hole that people put out there.
Yep.
They've got the Wisconsin Hall of Fame, and on the back of it is a giant flag, a U.S. flag, and the short basket now is in front of there. There is a longer basket that is further right. But hole 27, behind the basket, completely cleared out. There's no brush back there anymore. So there's trees. So if you get back there, it's very difficult to get out. I know. But if you get back there, it's cleared out. So it makes it a slightly different hole, but it's a lot of fun. And now they have a short position as well where we used to do off the raft. So about where that was is where there's a short position now, which is really cool. It's overall a phenomenal event, well run. The course was immaculate. I don't know if I've ever seen a wooded course anywhere in the world, even on the Pro Tour, that was as clean as that course. They just did a phenomenal job.
Stu and crew
did a great job, everybody. And
awesome.
It was a great event, run phenomenally as always, and things like that.
Well, I'll add to this. When everything he's saying is also, when people ask me what's my favorite course or where my favorite place to play is, it sounds like such a ridiculous answer to say after 8 or 10 or 12 countries and 400 different or 500 different courses that I've been to. But I say if I wanted to go play golf and enjoy myself the most, this is the place that Johnny's talking about. Sandy Point Resort, sandypt.com if you want to go to their website. The first ever disc golf resort in the country, put in around 92, 93. Had the first Northwoods Open in 94. And then, like I said, I think I was there, or maybe I was there in 96 because the first one was 95. Either way, I was there for the second one for then the next 20 some years. It absolutely just incredible. So, and then if you ever see Mike Cozzens, Cozzens, very active seller and has forever been an Innova distributor, but just an overall seller of discs. And you may have seen him if you're in any of the buy-sell trade type groups. He's also very active and was very active and continues to be, I believe, on eBay as well. So
And
if you've seen any of those names or Sandy PT, this is all the same.
And if you're into card collecting, you probably know Stu. Because what I didn't know before this was Stu is heavily into
The disc golf cards?
disc golf cards and trading cards in general. But
I had no idea.
I didn't know either until I was. I'm lucky enough that
You're
I could-
looking for something to start a campfire with, and
Not
like,
at
what are these
all.
cards for?
Not at
Can
all.
I use these?
We get to stay in the cabin that's right next to Stu's.
Uh-huh.
Stu has a place up there, and one of the guys we're staying with, I was talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, Stu called me last night, and he wanted me to bring up a bunch of cards." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, Stu's heavy into the card community," which I didn't know. So
Neither did I.
sure enough, like one of the gentlemen the next night comes wandering in. And he's like, "Yeah, just got done trading a whole bunch of stuff with Stu." Like they just back and forth. So it's very cool. Something I
he
didn't
must
know.
have autographed. You must have autographed your card for him.
I did not, but I did autograph a card for our friend Robbie. So he's good friends with our friend Nick Pecunia.
Okay.
So
well,
yeah, I was able to hand out 2 autographs this weekend. I signed a disc and I signed that card. So it was
that's
very
awesome.
very cool. It's
Yeah.
just a great weekend in general. Always so much fun.
Again, Sandy PT, they don't pay me for these plugs, but sandypt.com, I just put it in the chat as well, is the place if you want to check it out. And then there's some coverage on my page that will show you
The course.
from
It's
the course
just-
from a couple of years ago at least, that we got some stuff covered up there. Real quick, it's the after show. As we know, anything and everything goes. And every once in a while, if it falls on this special day or near it, you get a birthday shout out. There's a lot of amazing people in disc golf, so happy birthday to everybody. A few that we interact with a little more frequently is how I'll word this. First of all, Sam Anderson out of Las Vegas, who's been doing a ton of great work with the club, also helped organize it so that I could be out there for the Las Vegas Challenge, Halloween Challenge last year. And it's his birthday today. So happy birthday. I'm sure he's in a gym working out because the guy is ripped. So happy birthday to him. Dustin Moray.
Dust.
Good old
Happy
Dust.
birthday, Dust.
So happy birthday. Dustin, has done a ton of different disc golf media throughout the last couple of
Co-hosted
years.
with me a few weeks ago.
Co-hosted with Johnny. So big shout out to him. And he shares a birthday with Peter McBride, who has some disc golf cards because he was on the tour in the early days. Not as much now, but happy
I've
birthday
got
to
a Peter
Peter.
McBride card.
And last but not least, on today, specifically today's birthday shout
And what's today, Terry? Because a lot of people might be listening to this on
That's
Friday.
a good call. This is Tuesday, September 3rd right now. A bunch of my family has birthday coming up in the next few weeks, but today specifically, world champion Evelina Salonen celebrates her birthday today.
What a great, you win worlds.
Yeah.
You fly home on a whim with
To party with your
one of your
friends.
best friends, Henna, and to party with your friends and celebrate your birth. I can't imagine the drunken fun she's probably had because
Let's not insinuate anything.
she likes to drink.
We didn't say that here.
I did. She has told people, and I've heard her say it on interviews, that she enjoys a beverage.
She likes to professionally celebrate.
She is a good celebrator. But just as much fun as she probably has had this week.
Yes.
I am almost envious of that.
I did not know. So this ties, it's not really wasn't a loose end, but I remember speaking to her just after Worlds. And yes, we asked if she was going to go home, and she sent that nice message last week. However, when I said, will you come back for D-Glow? Because that was logical. To go home for more than a full week and then come back for a large Elite Plus event with, extra payout and everything else, it wouldn't be crazy for her to have come back by D-Glow. But knowing D-Glow is in a couple, 2 days, and then knowing her birthday is tonight in Finland, yeah, it makes a little bit more sense why she so quickly dismissed the idea of also being back for D-Glow. And I'm not saying if it wasn't her birthday, she would have for sure been back. She may have maintained that same exact mentality, and that's great too. I don't really care what her reasoning is. I love that she is celebrating, and it's like you said, bonus on top of it. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday to world champ Evelina Salonen.
Very cool.
Yanni, I believe, on the board says Taylor Samala is the GOAT of DG cards. Yeah, Taylor and I have had some conversations, and I have a copy of his spreadsheet, and it's scary. You're right.
So this is funny because we were talking up at Northwoods, and our friend Steve, who has what I thought was a very rare uncut from the 90s
sheet of the discards.
And I was like, wow, I can't imagine how many he got those from our friend Barry Schultz. Can't imagine how many of those there are in production. I said, that's got to be pretty rare. A handful maybe. And he's like, you think? He's like, you think it's worth anything? I'm like, I would think that to the right collector, that might be worth maybe 4 digits, depending on what you're asking and what you're not. So I put it out on the board and I said, hey, my buddy has this. Any idea maybe what it's worth or how many there are? Maybe there's only a couple. And someone had said, oh no, Samala found a handful of them and bought them from somebody who had them. So Samala has at least a handful of these uncut cards, and they're playing cards. But they've got pictures of 90s disc golfers in them, 90s and maybe early 2000s. And so that's what they are. But it's like he has this huge uncut sheet in his basement. And so apparently there are a few more of those uncut sheets floating around, which I think is kind of cool. And Taylor has a few of them.
Speaking of raw and uncut, Papa Wolf.
I don't know what that is.
He's a smashy who has won a couple of times
from
our giveaways, and also one of the main guys over there at Great Lakes Disc, and he had made an announcement bit.
Mr. Frawley.
Yeah, Brian, and just a little bit wondering if it was cryptic. He says it's been great, and that today may have been his last day at the job. And what I want to know is if he's still staying within disc golf or if there's some other adventure. I don't think we have the answer, but as many have noted, he's synonymous with some of the action over there in Michigan. Yeah. So we wish him all the best with whatever the next is. I don't know if I am supposed to talk about this. Or if I maybe mentioned even last week that the Paul Macbeth Foundation is working on their next potential trip. And
Bayside, Wisconsin? Is it my backyard?
No.
I'll keep trying.
But they are working on their next trip, and there's a good chance that if it happens, that I could be involved. And we're looking at very, 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 very south area of South America. And that's all I feel like I should probably share for now.
Chile, Argentina.
Down in that neck of the woods. Okay. So if that becomes officially a thing and I can go public with it, I'll share more. But I believe that's part of the conversation, rounding up people and schedules and things of that nature right now. So cool to have been in Mexico this weekend and talking to people that are a direct result of the Paul Macbeth Foundation.
Yeah, I was thinking
in Colombia a few years ago. I think that was Project 1.2 or 1.4 or something like that was over there. And then also, obviously, La Paz, which I think was the very first ever Macbeth Foundation installation, was La Paz, Mexico. And knowing that some of those players and influence are 100% represented here today and how people are going there to play. I think Mexico has 11 total courses as it is right now. Mm-hmm. And I'll tip my hat yet again to even the idea of the Paul Macbeth Foundation is not specific to a brand. And I know a lot of you would assume that, and I think it's a fair assumption, but it is not Discraft exclusive, even though that's Paul's main sponsor and so on and so forth. Now, Discraft has contributed and has given baskets to a number of the projects, as have Dynamic Discs, as have Discmania. I don't know if Innova or DGA have, but I know other brands have. And I think that's one of the cool parts about it is it's not just an exclusive branding for one particular manufacturer that the entire foundation works with. So I think that is also incredibly cool. And we're seeing the returns. We're seeing courses go in and people playing, and now people playing in tournaments 100% as a result of the work that foundation is doing to put golf in underdeveloped or underserved communities. It's great. All right. Anything else? My kids had their first day of school today. My daughters, who are
I know
13
when
and
you
15.
were when you were out of the country, I made a visit to your wife and family.
Good.
Checked
Good
in.
on you.
Uh,
How'd that go?
It was fine, actually. My family ended up going over to your family's house yesterday, and we watched the water skiing on Pewaukee Lake, which is a few blocks from where you live.
Yep.
So we kind of, because we haven't gotten together with your family for a while, and we figured no better time than when you're
I'm gone.
When you're gone. So yeah,
They make the best company. Yep.
That's right. So we had some tacos while we were there. Which was phenomenal. It was good. And then we walked and watched some fun water skiing. And
Was that pre or post lousy breaking her ankle? Was
that was post?
Okay.
So yeah. So 3 days ago, I believe
that when it happened?
Yeah, your daughter's friend who is on the water skiing team, which is the whole reason apparently we made this big plan together. Obviously to hang out with your family, but your family knows someone in the skiing community.
Yep.
She broke her ankle, and so she couldn't participate. So she was walking around with your daughter, who's one of her best friends, and just kind of hanging out. But yeah, we talked a lot about the family, about your daughter starting school, and my son started school today. Your daughter started today.
Yep.
My daughter doesn't start for another week or two, depending on when they get this damn school finished.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in Wisconsin. It's always been crazy because you and I, living in Wisconsin all our lives, whether it was the week before Labor Day or immediately following Labor Day, those were the only two options, depending on exactly how the calendar fell. That's when you start school.
Before Labor Day growing up.
I went to parochial school for a couple years, so it might have been, but nonetheless, it was. Those were the two options, though. Yeah. That's it. And so when we've been seeing now for a few weeks all these other schools around the country, when they're posting their pictures, I'm like, man, that is, it's a very different cultural thing to know that they're starting so much earlier as opposed to the standard that happens here in Wisconsin. But nonetheless, off to school they went today, and another scary year not so scary, but yeah. Yeah. That's all I can say on that.
Yeah, school sports.
Starting up. Cheerleading, volleyball, competitive cheer, dance.
Which neither of your daughters are doing school volleyball. They're doing club volleyball, right?
No, Kenzie's doing school volleyball.
Oh, she is. Okay.
Allie would do club if she does it. So
she said she was going to. That's what she told me. Because we were talking, my son does volleyball as well. He's one of 2 or 3 centers on the team because he's 6'7", and they just look at him and go, stand there and put your hands up there, dum-dum.
Yeah, as a timestamp here, he's 6'7" and 15.
15 and a half-ish. Yeah, he'll be not even, because he just turned 15 in July. So
so basically 15.
Yeah, so he's 6'7".
6'7".
Maybe a little plus that. We haven't measured recently, but yeah, so he's on the JV team. And he told me that there's one other varsity center for him, and he just, So I'm excited. Tomorrow's the first game of the season. It's an away game just up the road at Whitefish Bay.
Okay.
So that'll be fun. And then Friday will be a football game that I think we're all going to go to for the local high school football team.
Friday Night Lights, baby.
Go get them, Knights.
Friday Night Lights. Ed asked, do your kids get a fall break? No, they usually get a couple days off in late October for some school teacher planning resource thing. They usually get like a couple days right around then, and that's about it. So they don't have an actual extended fall break, and then it's what you would expect for like Thanksgiving and Christmas and such. Someone says kids have been around here for like for 1.5 or 2.5 weeks. Yeah, that's why it's different to see. Obviously, everyone's schedules are a little different, and then there's different times of year where they're having off, and our kids aren't, so to speak. But growing up exclusively and being within the Wisconsin school districts of knowing it's either the last week of August or the first week of September, never earlier than that, is just very different when we have so many Facebook friends from around the world or around the country that started literally weeks ago. It, to me, it's always been like, damn, they're already going to school.
Yeah, it's insane because I know some of the schools, even here in Milwaukee, started like 2 weeks ago, depending on if they're public or whatever. And I know last week, some of them already called off some school days because it was so hot. and not every school has air conditioning, and it's ridiculous. That's why I always thought it was weird to start in August. I was like, it's just so hot. Why would you start then? And you're killing your summer. I'd rather be off in August than May, but whatever. I don't make the rules. I just follow them.
That's right. You're a rule follower.
Yeah. Yanni says we're going into week 3 of high school football. Actually, we are too. Because the schedules for other schools start sooner. I think football practice started in the beginning of August. They played my understanding is 2 non-conference games, and this will be the first conference game of the year for high school football. But this is technically their 3rd game, of which we're 2-0.
Yeah, you are.
I honestly, which is funny because I know one person on the football team, and it's our friend's son. I don't even really care that much about the football team because I don't have anyone on it. It's just we'll go there and have fun and watch and cheer and then walk away. And I won't think of anything.
Speaking of fun, a couple of quick things. One, I saw, if you're into that sort of thing, and I'm sure others are doing it too, but I saw Ricky Wysocki has posted his course preview videos out at Deagla. I just happened to see those right before the show tonight. Mm-hmm. Usually we see the likes of like an Ezra or a Gossage or a Brody, Connor O'Reilly, a bunch of others often post them. I just know I saw in my feed today that Ricky's is out there, so go watch that if you want. And another thing that I didn't dive any deeper into, but I did see a few things while scrolling last night. It looks like there was a really good time had by we'll say House of Dis people or Trilogy people over at the Walmart where they filmed inside Walmart in Emporia. And they did that back around the time of the Dynamic Dis Open is when they filmed it. And it looks like now they're starting to release some of the footage from it. And the Walmart, I remember asking, they were all on board and made it as fun and let them have as much latitude, latitude as possible in doing so.
Were they on the west side of the Walmart?
Yes, of course they are.
Okay.
It was a dynamic time or something. So I saw some of those videos pop up on my feed. I haven't had a chance to watch them, but it looked like a really good time.
I've just caught a few of the highlights.
Yes, so that's pretty cool. My adventure yesterday consisted of a very easy 4-hour ride from Mexico City into Chicago, to which then I took a bus to get back up to the Milwaukee area. And
your wife was like, "Yeah, we had to drop the car off at the park and ride because that's where Terry's going to."
Yeah, that's where the bus came in late. But what a great experience! I've done it before. But I think I might do it more when coming in and out of O'Hare because it's so easy to get to. And I never thought I'd be excited about a 2-hour bus ride, but to not deal with Chicago or the traffic or be stressing out of it in any capacity, and then just simply get dropped off not far for a reasonable price. Yeah, all around good experience.
Not too bad.
All right. I don't know if we have anything else to worry about it. Asking when's graduation. Yeah, usually the first week of June. It's never before that. And it's a matter of if it's the first or second week of June is what we see for most of the kids in the schools. Obviously, colleges are usually almost 2 or 3 weeks earlier. But for the school districts, yeah, first or second week. It used to always be first, I feel like, and that has extended a little into second.
Obviously, it depends.
That's where they're making up for it.
The schools that are going in earlier, they'll do it in mid-May. But
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a giveaway tonight.
We do have a giveaway, Terry. We have your Disc Golf Guy disc.
Yeah.
Celebrating your trip to Mexico.
Yeah. To Coquioque is the city in which we were, and I believe the state of Morales. I'm trying to learn things here, people.
That's good.
Anyway, this is the disc. Only 50 were made. 40 some were sold. Couple are getting tucked away for me to keep forever as my own. But I figured this is a great way to thank our Smashies, Patreon Smashies at least, and give one of these away tonight. Also, big thanks to the couple of individuals that thought it was appropriate to give me a bottle of tequila upon arriving. Which
did you drink it?
One of them got shared at the party on Saturday night.
Because you're not much of a tequila guy.
I really haven't been. I always say the last time I had an experience was the 1997 Super Bowl with the Packers when we were in college.
Ooh.
And we decided to celebrate every score. And that was not a good idea as the Packers went on to win that Super Bowl. And since then, I have shied away from tequila.
It's so good in margaritas, though.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll partake.
Of course.
But I have not been one to seek it out in the last 27 years. This weekend, I couldn't avoid it. So
I would imagine. I had a bottle. Take it back. I had what they considered a shot, which I believe was about 2 ounces of a extremely high-end tequila. I don't know. It came somewhere from Mexico. This was a couple months ago for a work outing. And the small glass, the 2 ounces, I believe was, I think it was an $80 to $90 shot. It was ridiculous. And someone at work was buying with their work card. It wasn't me. So
ring them up.
So it was smooth, but I drank it slow. Not going to lie. Whereas if normally, every other time in my life I've had tequila, it's just been salt, salt, liquor, chase. But not that one. And it was all right. And I'm good. I'm not so much of a straight tequila drinker, but I would partake if it was thrown in front of me.
Well, Mejo and Renee, thank you both for the beverages. One of which, like I said, came back with me today. All right.
We have 121 people eligible for our giveaway tonight. Patreon.com/SmashboxTV for as little as $1 a month. You can be eligible for our giveaways. Yeah, that's right. Like, that's for a really nice cup of coffee for the entire year. You can support us. If you listen to us, not only do you owe us, I'm just saying you should probably pay up for stop freeloading, but if you were to maybe meet us out at an establishment, would you buy me a drink? If so, you might as well subscribe to Patreon. Then if we meet out at that bar, you don't feel obligated to buy me or Terry a drink. You can still do it, but you won't feel obligated.
If that's not logic, I don't know what is.
That's the best logic I can come up with, Terry. There's 121 people eligible for our giveaway tonight. Terry, what number should we generate?
I think we got to go with the first one. First time in Mexico.
Okay. First time John Houck's been on the show.
First time Houck's been on the show. Yeah, seems appropriate. The very first number we have.
I sorted them by first name.
All right.
I'm going to hit generate.
Here we go.
And the number is 50.
50. I'm going to say that's
50.
Starts with
Come on.
An M.
All right. I don't think it's an M. I'm going to go with a J.
That's almost what I said.
All right, so I'm scrolling up to 50, and it is an I. Ian Vance. Ian Vance.
Heck yeah, Ian.
But Price is Right rules. We both went over. No one wins.
Yep. No, I keep it.
So no. You or I don't win.
Okay.
No, Ian does. Ian wins.
Ian Vance. That's a new name who I've not seen as a winner anytime recently.
No, congratulations, Ian. You are the proud owner of this wonderful Mako 3.
No, Suspect.
Or Suspect, sorry. I thought you said, no, what did you say was
the Innova-Disc?
Oh, the Innova-Disc that I gave you was
the
Mako 3. Yeah. This is the Suspect from Dynamic Discs.
Yes.
So you are the proud owner of this new piece of plastic.
And if you happen to hear this I'll reach out to you soon. And if you would like me to sign it, I will. And if you don't, I'll send as is. But either way, happy to get this out to you, Ian. We'll have to get your address because it doesn't appear that we have it. So let's get that.
No, so thank you very much, Ian.
Yes, thank you. All right. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments, anything off the board? Otherwise, we can start to shut this show down as it's been a pretty solid night. Some people said thanks for having John Houck on the show. Of course, our pleasure. Like we said, we love to
talk to the people. We love to talk to the legends. They always have so much
good insight.
Good insights. I do want to give a shout out to Scott Stokely. He's doing some large push for getting off of tobacco, whether that be smoking, chewing, whatever it is. He also has like a support group, I believe, on his Discord or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who has wanted to kick whatever habit you have, if you don't enjoy it or you don't want to have that habit, by all means, reach out to that Stokely group and there's support there for you. So shout out to Scott and his group for doing that. I believe he was a longtime smoker that maybe he'd given up, or maybe it was something else that he had given up. But either way, by all means, reach out and do that. And congratulations to anyone that has done it or is in the middle of it. It's not. I understand it's not easy.
As he worded just the other day, something about this day and or this week being the toughest week to do so. So best of luck to anyone and everyone that is hoping to follow that path. Love it. With that, I guess that's about all that we have. It's been a good night. It's great to hear from, again, John Houck. Also great to list off a number of the winners and the storylines. Best of luck to everyone this weekend for D-Glow. Johnny nor I are working it in any capacity.
No.
So I'm not going to say I'm going to entirely check out, but it's a lot harder for me to pay attention. I'm not going to lie.
I won't check out. I will probably put it on the background.
Then I'll ask you. So, because I will probably not. I mean, of course, I'll look at some scores. I'll do that.
I'll keep you up to date, Terry.
But I'm not going to be glued to my screen. I'm gonna try to actually step away from some disc golf media so I can go edit. Actually, it's really where I'll change my focus. Yeah. But it won't be on watching every minute of this weekend. So best of luck to all the competitors. Best of luck to everyone. Hopefully there's good weather. And hopefully everybody can maintain and work themselves through 4 days out at the toboggan, because that is no joke. Even the in-shape people will tell you it's a workout. Mm-hmm. So it's not just me whining. And I won't be there, so it's not a problem. All right, thank you to all our Smashies. So many regulars out on the board. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us live. Thank you to all of you that download and listen to it. We haven't said it in a while, but giving us some reviews in whatever your podcast app is, please do so. That also helps with people being able to find it and know what we're doing.
Word of mouth is great. If you know a disc golfer that wants to... that's looking for a podcast, by all means, suggest us. And a shout out to Yanni Melee, who just gave a $2 super chat, calling it a freeloader tax for not being a Patreon supporter.
You guilted right into that one.
I did. Thank you very much. That is another way that you can show your support for us.
And we do appreciate it.
We love it. Thank you very much.
All right. That's podcast after show of 5/22 for Johnny V. I'm the disc golf guy. Have a great weekend. Stay out of trouble. We'll see you next week. You step inside the Smashbox.